Hello, Jacksonites. Pardon the long absence yet again, but hopefully today's video will make up for it because me and a certain somebody are going to be having a lot to say about this film. So, jumping right into yet another little written speech that I have prepared for you guys here. Just bear with me, it'll all fall into place. In the world of comic book superheroes, the idea of a famous, iconic hero teaming up with another is always a fun and awesome concept. Superman and Wonder Woman, Spider-Man and Captain America, Hulk and The Thing, The Flash and Green Arrow, Iron Fist and Luke Cage, even Spawn and Witchblade. No matter what, it's always fun to think about how two different heroes could work together to defeat evil, balancing their strengths and weaknesses, evening each other out, backing each other up to take down a massive threat. The sense of camaraderie between two powerful characters can be quite infectious, endearing, and captivating. That aspect is exponentially increased when there is a team of superheroes, of which in the world of comics, there are certainly no shortage of. The Justice League, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Avengers, the West Coast Avengers, various teams of Power Rangers, the Teen Titans, the Fantastic Four, and even across the world in Japan. I know these aren't comics, but there's various teams of Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, and my favorite of all, the mighty Ultramen and their various groups, the Ultra Brothers, the Galaxy Rescue Force, the Ultimate Force Zero, and even the Tri Squad. All these teams consisting of various powerful heroes combining all their resources, powers, and skills in order to become an unstoppable force to defeat all those that wish to see carnage, death, destruction, and chaos. Of all superhero teams, there is one other that holds a massive amount of significance in the realm of comics. And while they were not the first, they were among the first to popularize the idea of a group of superpowered characters teaming up. But they are also the team that showed the public that comics can be used to tell many other stories aside from generic bad guy causes explosion, good guy saves the world. And that team is, of course, the Uncanny X-Men. Debuting in September of 1963, the X-Men consists of superpowered beings known as mutants, who are born with the X gene that bestows them various superpowers that makes them superior to humans. Powers ranging from enhanced to superhuman strength, bony, sharp protrusions all over the body, telekinesis, telepathy, energy absorption, energy projection, flight, feathery wings, stretchable skin. You can almost name it, and various mutants in the X-Men universe have showcased it, which leads me to believe that the X-Men are the most diverse, unique, and varied group of superheroes in all of comics. And with these mutant characters, there comes a lot of social and political commentaries that are told through the stories of these mutants trying to coexist with the rest of humanity. While I myself do not have the knowledge, time, or full insight that go very deep into all the various parallels between X-Men and their mutants and real world social struggles, as I think that would require a 5-part In Search of Darkness style 10-hour long documentary to explain in full detail, I can recognize and appreciate a lot of the messages the X-Men comics have told us throughout the years, mainly about not fearing what we don't understand and accepting and conquering differences, amongst various other things. But aside from that, the X-Men have also showcased some of the most iconic, badass, and powerful superheroes, both in all of Marvel Comics as well as all various comics in general. Jubilee, Storm, Jean Grey, Professor X, Magneto, Warpath, Rogue, Beast, Sunspot, Cannonball, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Emma Frost, Juggernaut, Banshee. The list goes on and on. And hands down, my two tied favorites being the Mighty Colossus, of course, my strong preference to characters that have massive super strength rearing its ugly head. And of course, my absolute favorite, not trying to be typical or boring, but it is, of course, the animal with claws, Weapon X, the best there is at what he does, with what he does not being very nice. James Howlett, Logan, the Wolverine, arguably being the flagship character of the entire X-Men series, aside from Professor X himself. Wolverine is one of the most well-known, iconic, badass superheroes of all time. And many people have stated him as being one of their favorite heroes from Marvel Comics, if not their number one favorite, myself included. If I was to make a top 15 or 20 list of my favorite Marvel superheroes, Wolverine would rank in at number 3, right behind the Amazing Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk. In film and television, the X-Men have also had no shortage of appearances. Of course, the 90s X-Men animated series being the first series to really popularize animated Marvel shows throughout the 90s, with Hulk, Spider-Man, and Iron Man getting their own shows as a sort of competitor to Warner Brothers' DC animated universe. Then we had X-Men Evolution, which was the series I watched a fair bit of as a kid, as well as Wolverine and the X-Men, the two X-Men and Wolverine anime shows, and the recently released X-Men 97 show, a sequel to the original 90s animated series, which no, I have not seen. Don't say a word. And obviously, the most well-known showcase of the X-Men on the silver screen is the 20th Century Fox X-Men franchise. Starting back in 2000 and officially ending in 2020 with the release of the New Mutants, literally landing on its ass, shitting and falling in it, with a grand total of 13 films, of which only 9 I've seen myself. But the reason for this is a bit frustrating. Despite all of my issues regarding the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Fox X-Men series is, in my opinion, the most wildly inconsistent superhero franchise in terms of quality in the entire history of cinema. With some of them being pretty solid comic book films, making great efforts to capture the same spirit of the comics, as well as the same various social commentaries like X-Men 2, X-Men Days of Future Past, and Deadpool, and others being some of the worst and most poorly made comic book films of all time, namely X-Men Origins Wolverine and X-Men First Class. But as the franchise went on, I personally got less and less interested as the franchise was getting more and more bloated with poor decisions, as 20th Century Fox tended to do with most of their franchise. With poor storylines, bland, underwhelming action scenes, some films being helmed by rookie directors making that movie their debut film. Look at Dark Phoenix, for example. Painfully miscasted characters, incredibly unnecessary reshoots, and a seemingly intentional desire to not give X-Men fans the proper films that they want to see. And real quick, I would like to go through all the X-Men films that I have seen just to quickly get my brief thoughts out of the way, Seanie Boy included. So, starting, of course, with the original X-Men film from 2000, it's not aged well. It's not a bad film by any means, but it definitely does feel both like a setup film, and it's got massive first chapter syndrome like nobody's business. It does have good performances. It does make a valiant effort to, again, capture the spirit of the original X-Men comics. Of course, it has some great actors involved: Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Hugh Jackman, Famke Jensen. All do a really good job. But just in the scope of superhero films that have come out since the year 2000, while the original X-Men can be appreciated for, as I mentioned before, X-Men kind of pushed open the doors and showed studios that superhero films can be done. There definitely have been way better movies made since the original X-Men. Sean.
Oh, okay. I guess we'll go from the beginning too. Well, hi everyone, Sean here. After Nick had his really long speech, but yes, the first X-Men movie. I have a couple after the movie videos done discussing some of the X-Men films. Like pretty much, I talked Deadpool 1, 2, and Wolverine and Logan, and then my friend and I were going to go through and talk about all the X-Men films. We got all the way up to like through First Class, and the next one was the Wolverine. So if you want to know more deep thoughts on that, you can check those out. But I actually was there in the theaters watching the first X-Men movie. That's like one of the first movies I ever saw in theaters that I actually have any like real memories of. And I was still like, Wolverine was obviously my favorite. He was the one, him and Cyclops, because I watched the cartoon in that beforehand, but I was still confused why he like they didn't like wear the colors and all that too, because they had to have the generic ugly looking leather costumes. Instead of
I don't mind the leather costumes, but they are kind of boring visually.
Right. I mean, the first X-Men movie is a prototype movie. It's not too innovative. It's like it tried to get like the more modern era of superhero movies, the ball rolling on that. Because I mean, superhero movies, it's not like it's anything new. Superman the movie, the Batman films from like '89 onwards. Blade was kind of the film that really kind of, but no, not too many people really consider that as much of a superhero film. They just thought it was just like some vampire hunter guy, like at the time, but.
Well, it certainly is a like vampire action horror film first, but it is
Right.
also still a superhero film.
Right. But like when more people thought superhero movies, like X-Men was kind of the first one of that new era really associated with it. I mean, I would argue Blade, but you get what I'm kind of saying.
As
Like
do
it's
I.
right, like a more mainstream and like reaching a wider demographic past the R rating. Because Blade could have just been like you could just look at it as like any other type of action movie, like but not specifically like as much in terms of superhero characters, like more comic booky. Like I mean, the first Blade's pretty fucking awesome. So I mean, Blade 1 is fantastic, and it
Blade
was cool
2
to
is
see.
even better.
Yeah, what's that?
Blade 2 is even better.
I know, like I sometimes go back and forth on them because like they're both really neck and neck, and then Trinity just sort of happens. But at least I got to see
Eh.
what, at least I got to see Wesley Snipes again when Deadpool and Wolverine came out, which I was genuinely really surprised because all those years of rumors of him and Ryan Reynolds not getting together. So it's like it's one of those kind of jaw shocking moments, like really you. But anyways, so it's a discussion for another day. But the first X movie is more of a prototype movie. And, it's like there's things I still remember seeing in the theaters. I thought Wolverine was awesome. Like he was my favorite part of the movie. Some things don't really work as well. I mean, a lot of the cast was pretty well done. I feel like Cyclops could have been given more to do in those movies. Also, Logan, just give up on Jean. Storm is right there. And just, I mean, both were pretty
Absolutely.
fine. I mean,
No,
both.
Halle Berry's way better than Famke.
But upon rewatching X-Men, I forgot how fine Famke was at the time. But I'm still more of a Halle Berry fan.
Oh yeah.
But, I mean, I watched Die Another Day and a few other movies in that era. I mean, still looks great. But yeah, I mean, there's just Logan. Come on, man, she was right there. And that was a deleted scene in Days of Future Past where they were together. But no, we have to have this Cyclops, Jean, Logan thing. But anyways, if you want to know more of my thoughts on X-Men, go check out the video. And then I guess we move on to the next.
X-Men 2, on the other hand, is a
Much
way
better,
movie.
it's way better. So
way better action scenes. Wolverine does not get the shit beaten out of him the entire film, unlike the first movie.
The Nightcrawler scene.
Nightcrawler scene's pretty badass. We see more mutants, more iconic mutants like Lady Deathstrike and Colossus for the first time. We see Brian Cox portray one of the best X-Men villains in William Stryker. Very, very different from the comics, but it still feels like Stryker in a way. overall, it's a way, way, way better film than the first X-Men movie. One of the best X-Men films, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean,
X-Men 3.
I don't hate X-Men 3.
I like X-Men 3 a lot, actually. I think it's way better than
The
most
best
people
thing
give
about
credit
the
for.
movie is Beast.
No, it's all the action scenes. But Kelsey Grammer does do a
Kelsey
really good
Grammer
job
is
as
perfect
Beast.
as Beast, and like him and
Absolutely.
Wolverine, like as soon as he like speaks, I'm like, oh my god, that's Beast. Like he just
Straight
nailed
up.
it. First line, he just nailed the character, and I mean, him and Wolverine like right off each other, like banter off each other. So I'm like, there's memorable and cool things in X-Men 3. It's not like an amazing, incredible film, but I don't hate it like so many other people do. Like when Magneto lifts the Golden Gate Bridge,
Golden Gate Bridge.
that poor
That
bridge
damn
that's been
bridge.
that fucking bridge, man. Like every time if I get trapped in a movie somehow and I see that bridge, I'm running the hell away from it because it gets destroyed more than it like stands. More than
It
its
does
last
have a
stand.
pretty lame Juggernaut, though. Like, the actor does a good job playing him.
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch.
The design is just crap. But it also does showcase some of Ian McKellen's best acting as Magneto in the entire series, especially when he's chewing out Pyro for wanting to kill Professor X. He just goes, Charles Xavier did more for mutant kind than you or I or anybody else in this forest. Something along those lines. But
Charles never really died, I guess, because the post-credit scene, like he transferred his consciousness.
Yeah, that's the fucking timeline of the X-Men series is just a complete messy clusterfuck of bullshit. So I'm not even gonna touch it with a 10-foot pole.
I mean, Deadpool kind of makes fun of it too. Like, is this
Yes.
because it gets so messy.
And unfortunately, the fourth film, X-Men Origins Wolverine, makes the timeline more jumbled and confusing than the Legend of Zelda timeline. It's sad.
I saw that one in theaters as well.
I saw that in theaters too, actually. The first one I saw in theaters. First of three that I saw in theaters. I liked it when I first saw it. But time has not been kind to that film. And unfortunately, I have to agree, the scene with the claws in the bathroom has not held up well at all. It's got some... Huh?
I was gonna say one thing, Nick, because I did see it, and we can check out on the channel a bit where we talked about it. I like the movie up until like right after he becomes like adamantium fueled. After that, it goes downhill. Like up to that point, like the opening scene where it's like him going through the different like wars and stuff. I thought that was kind of cool. There's a few good action bits, but like it's after he becomes like full adamantium and all that, and then he goes to the barn, then it just really just takes a nosedive. There's the scene where like the ladder is getting like it looks so bad. Oh man.
Yeah, I'd have to. For me, the movie goes downhill when he gets to 3 Mile Island, because then it feels rushed. You can tell half of it's a reshoot and green screened. That is not Deadpool. Straight up, those fucking long ass blades coming out of his hands. Once he retracted them, he would not be able to bend his arms. It'd be impossible. That is not Deadpool. Fuck you. And
Terrible.
Deadpool does not have heat vision.
Well, and like Ryan Reynolds basically just did that because he's like, if he doesn't get to, then he's not going to be able to play the character. He had to like sacrifice it, but he's made so many jokes about that movie that it's kind of like made some retroactively funny stuff.
Sure, and the biggest issue of all is that it has one of the worst cases of prequelitis I've ever fucking seen. And it's got numerous continuity errors that just will make your head explode trying to figure them out. It's definitely one of those movies that makes less sense the more you try to make it make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just...
X-Men First Class, I did not like at all.
I'm kind of just like, it's okay. I know a lot of people really like First Class. It has one of the best Wolverine appearances, though.
Go fuck
yourself.
Highlight of the movie for me.
Yeah, that is for me as well. I did like some of the cast member. Fassbender is really good, and I like McAvoy. But you know, some of the others didn't really work as well for me. Kevin Bacon was cool to see him play a villain, but
Kevin Bacon was okay as the villain,
But it's
but
like,
what really kills both First Class and Days of Future Past for me is the casting. I don't like Michael Fassbender as Magneto. I'm sorry, he just doesn't work for me. I really don't like James McAvoy as Professor X. Again, just does not work for me. Also, once you give me Sir Patrick Harris as Professor
Patrick,
Xavier,
did you just say Patrick Harris?
Patrick Harris, fuck. Yeah, totally. Patrick Stewart, excuse me. Can you tell I have a lot to say about this? Yeah,
Yeah,
once you give me Patrick Stewart as Professor X and then you downgrade to James McAvoy, nah, you've lost me.
right. He's not
I
as good.
especially do not like Jennifer Lawrence
Oh my
as
God.
Mistake.
She's okay
I
in the first class, but then she just gets progressively worse with each performance because she was like they made the movies about her because of the Hunger Games.
that and I also very firmly believe the only reason that Jennifer Lawrence was cast as Mystique was because a lot of Fox executives wanted to see Jennifer Lawrence dressed up as naked Mystique. That's the only reason that I will stick to that till the end of time.
But you know the thing is, Rebecca Romaine was awesome as Mystique.
Becca Romaine was awesome as Mystique and fine too. But
Like we
then
go from
we
Mystique to
downgrade
Mistake.
to fucking J Law and nah.
So it just not a great performance.
X-Men Days of Future Past has a lot of the
Wait, we
same
skipped one. We
problems.
skipped the Wolverine, which
Never seen the
I've
Wolverine.
never seen it either. I like
It
it was
looks
next on my list to watch, but I still haven't gotten around to watching it. I'm like, I gotta check it out, and then I gotta check it. I should just watch the remaining ones because it's like I never actually saw them, but I was kind of X-Men out at this point, to be honest. Like we were up to first
same.
class, and I'm like, and Origins Wolverine and all that. I'm like, I'm really kind of feeling the X-Men fatigue at this point when in the series because I'm just like, I just don't care. But except for what, like this next movie actually kind of got me excited a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, the Wolverine looks okay. Like it looks way more well made than X-Men Origins, that's for sure. And
hmm
there are some things about it that do look interesting. But I just haven't gotten around to seeing it. Days of Future Past, I saw in theaters with my dad, and it was a little bit better than First Class because at least it had some decent action scenes and it had some good Wolverine action. Although I don't like adamantium less Wolverine, that feels like a downgrade to me. Um, but I can't do Fassbender, can't do McAvoy, can't do Lawrence. They ruined the films for me. I just can't do it.
I really like.
Although
Oh,
it does have a really solid final performance for Ian McKellen as older Magneto. The scene when he tries to stop the Sentinels from attacking them with his powers on a massive scale, that is a cool scene. That's the best part of the movie.
hmm I haven't seen it really since the theaters, but I remember like leaving and really enjoying Days of Future Past, or as I like to call it, X-Men Erase X3. Um, from the
Kind of.
timeline,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's like the end of the movie. It's just like Wolverine's there, Cyclops is back, and all that too. And I was kind of bummed, like, because then they went back to the prequel cast again, and I'm just like, they should have just continued with the original X-Men film cast instead of going back to the younger cast members because it's like you've already changed the timeline. Now I know where it's going to lead to, and it kind of worked because it was almost like a crossover between two different series at once, which I think just the plot line and Hugh Jackman in there as well was really great. I know you're not as big a fan of James McAvoy, but the line where he just basically repeats what Wolverine said
Fuck
to
off.
him, I'll tell you what you told me. Fuck off. That was genuinely pretty great. So, and Quicksilver, like he gets a better scene in the next movie, but the scene he has is
I haven't seen X-Men Apocalypse either. I have no desire to do so.
X-Men Apocalypse is not good, but it has one absolutely amazing scene. Have you seen the scene at least with Quicksilver?
No, I'm not
No, no,
interested.
no, 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 no. Just watch the one scene. You don't need to watch the rest of the movie. It is all like done in like the super, like he's got a super speed, so everything's really slow motion. It's got like Sweet Dreams playing, and he has to save the entire like X-Men. What do they call X-Men Academy or whatever?
No, I have not seen the Rogue cut of Days of Future Past. Didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Like I said, I haven't watched it since the theaters, but yeah. So like Days of Future Past, are like X-Men Apocalypse, just not very good. It's very forgettable. Apocalypse was such a lackluster villain. He looks
Looking
like
like
Ivan
Ivan
Ooze.
Ooze
Yep.
from fucking the Power Rangers movie.
Which we should talk about that at some point, Nick, because it's like the 30th anniversary this year.
Maybe. I'll think about it.
The Ooh, or no, it's next year's the 30th anniversary. The Ooze is back. I was actually watching that a little bit the other day. Um,
Very quickly, the other movies that I haven't seen. Yeah, I haven't seen Dark Phoenix. I have no desire to see that movie whatsoever.
you forgot about the next movie in the list
Not
after
just
Apocalypse.
bear with me. Just bear with me. Yeah, I haven't seen Dark Phoenix. I have no desire to do so. It looks like a boring slog fest. That's the movie that the director of the film, that was his debut film. And that to me just screams like a bad idea. If you have an established franchise and an installment is a director's debut film, that to me screams desperation. Like,
The Dark
nah, no,
Universe.
thank you. And I have not seen the New Mutants either. And this is for a couple of reasons. I actually was really interested in seeing the New Mutants. I think the New Mutants as a team, they're kind of underrated. Essentially like Marvel's version of the Teen Titans. Um, and when I read that it was supposed to be a superhero horror film, that got me really intrigued. And then it got delayed and then delayed and then delayed and delayed. And then by the time it came out, I saw that it was PG-13. Now, if I'm not mistaken, New Mutants was supposed to be released originally either in late 2018 or early 2019, but it got delayed so many times due to reshoots to make the film more frightening. But then the film came out and it was PG-13, and just something about it was screaming to me, no, the real reason why it got delayed and reshot was they edited it down from an R rating to a PG-13 rating. And in the end, COVID, it being delayed nearly 2.5 years, and the massive potential that it was supposed to originally be R rated, that's the reason why the franchise ended on such a whimper, making only like 40 something million against a 90 million budget. So I just never cared.
Mm-hmm.
But then the two other films that I have seen, Deadpool and Deadpool 2, just wait, bear with me. Deadpool being the film that kind of saved the franchise for a little while
It kind of
and
did.
saved Hollywood, is a good film. I personally am not a huge fan of Deadpool. I think he's A, very annoying, but also B, kind of overrated. But the first Deadpool movie is a damn fine film. It snapped Hollywood out of its dark PG-13 phase, making studios realize, oh, wait, actually, yeah, R-rated movies actually can make money. And especially if you let a talented director and a talented actor, in theory, just do what they do best and give audiences what they want to see. Oh, yeah, these movies can make money. And Deadpool made over $700 million against a mere $57 million budget.
That's what makes it work, is because it was like they were given less resources, but the way they shot it, the way they like acted and everything, like it felt like a much bigger movie than what the budget showcased. I mean, look at so many movies nowadays are like $300+ million movies, and you can't tell where the
The
money's at. Like,
Flash.
yeah, The Flash. I mean, in some ways I can see it, like with the set designs and filming in big locations and all that, but the VFX, no.
The
Or
shit visual effects
yeah,
are, yeah, nah.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which just it's like almost like $400 million budget, and it's just like why? Because so many reshoots. That's the problem. Is like people like they reshoot half the movie again, and it's like, what's the point? Just get it right like the first time. Plan it out. Like don't do your last minute changes. Sometimes reshoots can help a film, and other times, most of the times, they just kind of tank it. Look at Justice League. The 2017 version of it, like what a fucking mess, and just so much money wasted.
Yeah, as we've discussed earlier this year.
Yeah,
And then Deadpool 2 is not as good as the first one.
yeah, I haven't seen it since theaters, to be honest.
Neither
And
have I.
I remember laughing at some of it and having a good time, but I haven't seen it since.
Yeah, that's obviously where I coined the phrase Deadpool 2 syndrome, where I think the biggest problem with Deadpool 2, to me at least, it sacrifices action for more comedy. And while, yes, it is funny and it is entertaining, I still want to see Deadpool go around and fuck people up left and right with guns, knives, and swords.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not as much of that as there should be, especially with the film having more than twice the budget of the first film. And it made roughly about the same amount of money, so it's not like it underperformed. But I because I'm a different kind of Deadpool fan, I want to see badass Deadpool, not really funny Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't jibe with me the same as the first film. But with all that, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, so I guess like where was it? We're at. I left off like 2014 Days of Future Past. I liked it. X-Men Apocalypse, not very good, pretty crappy. Aside from the one Quicksilver scene, which, as Tevia points out in the comments, that one scene is absolutely amazing. Nick, just watch that one scene and that's it, because that one scene is like man, if only the rest of the movie were as good as this one scene. Because like I don't care for that movie, but I love that scene. Is there any movie you can think of where you love one scene in it, but the rest of the movie you just don't care for, but that one scene is just amazing?
Probably, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Okay, well, think about it while I'm saying this stuff. Maybe you'll come up with an example. But that's that one scene in a movie for me. A great scene in a crappy movie, I'll say. And then what was after that? So the first Deadpool, really enjoy the first Deadpool. There's a few things it has that don't really work for it. For instance, the villains just this is the problem with a lot of these X-Men movies. The villains are so forgettable outside of just Magneto. Like they just don't leave much of an impact. I mean, Mystique, I guess, counts as one, but then they try to make her
He's
like
kind
the
of an
big
anti-villain.
right. But like, I mean, Stryker was decent, but like, do you think like all-time great villain performance, unless it's Ian McKellen, none of these movies have really had this an amazing villain. And
And it's kind of a shame because
right.
X-Men does have a pretty large variety of villains. Like two others I can think of aside from Stryker and Magneto. You got Onslaught and Mr. Sinister.
Yeah. I thought we were gonna get Mr. Sinister or something at some point, but yeah, we just never did. So the first Deadpool, really enjoyed that one. I think that one was a breath of fresh air when it came out. It was funny. Has a lot of action. And I think too, like they know when to kind of restrain Deadpool a little bit in the movies. I think you got to have a good supporting cast around him, and that first movie definitely had it, and it had no problem poking fun at different things. And it felt fresh at the time with the superhero genre the way it was, and it made a huge amount of money. And like you said, it kicked Hollywood into the high gear, and like kind of like showcasing that R-rated movies can be successful in this regards, like big budget ones, or not necessarily like huge budgets, but like be like big, huge hits again. So I did appreciate it for that. What came after that? Like, well, I mean, we'll get to Logan in a second. So Logan was the next year, and obviously we'll be talking about that one. 33 minutes, like nearly 40 minutes before the title of the video starts. But it's a whole X-Men like retrospective, anyways, but primarily focusing on Logan. So Deadpool 2, I saw it once in theaters. I found it really funny, and then that was it. I haven't like seen it since. I didn't think it was as good as the first movie, and I don't really remember too much about it. That's the thing with these X-Men movies. I see them like usually like once or twice.
It does have a way better Juggernaut than X-Men 3.
Right. So Josh Brolin was in it. That's right. I
forgot. Tommy, motherfucker.
I gotta watch them again because it's been a few years. And then what was after that? Dark Phoenix. I saw a lot of scenes of it, some really bad scenes, and I'm like, I didn't have the strength to watch it all. I know how it begins and how it ends, and a lot of the stuff that happens in it. But I'm just like, I think even the trailers are like, there's always a speech, Charles, but like it's supposed to be like the 90s at this point, but they don't look anything remotely close to Patrick Stewart or Ian McKellen at this point. And the timeline is just really dumb. Just at that point, everyone was just so checked out, and the makeup for Mystique just looked genuinely terrible. And
yeah, there's a reason why that movie only made $247 million against a $200 million
budget. And yeah, isn't it funny too how like at that time everyone was like, get rid of the X-Men stuff, we want just the pure MCU stuff. But now the tables have turned and they're begging for the Fox X-Men stuff back because the main MCU stuff was really kind of tanking. And what was the thing that was their biggest hit in a while? Deadpool and Wolverine. Which, you know, I have a longer video on that if you want to hear my thoughts on it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was funny. It definitely has its problems. If you just want like a buddy cop movie with Deadpool and Wolverine, with just kind of having fun with it, then it's the way to go. Plus, it has Blade in it, so that's kind of cool. And Gambit with Channing Tatum and his really over the top Cajun accent. Have you been seeing the memes of it, or no? Like I everywhere I go, I just see the meme where it's like, "Whoa, I've been waiting a long time for this," and he's talking to that like it's kind of like that 22 Jump Street where he's like, "My name is Jeff." Like anytime he does like a silly voice, it just becomes a big meme. And then yeah, Dark Phoenix happened. Yeah, I that movie was supposed to be like this big horror film, and I'm like, okay, you know, I was kind of enjoying how Fox was getting experimental with the X-Men stuff and just kind of being unique, but then they just delayed the movie several times and just I would like to see what it was originally before it was fucked around. It's kind of like Fan Four Stick. Remember how that movie was butchered so badly? But then again, that is the worst, arguably the worst mainstream superhero movie I've ever seen. That one was just that bad, and I've sat through some stinkers, but that one just took the cake for shitty. So yeah, that's the X-Men movies. You know, a lot of hits and misses.
So despite all the film's faults, there is one installment that stands above all others. One that absolutely blows away all the other installments of the franchise and even puts down some of the best entries in the MCU or really any other comic book film franchise that's ever been made. For me, rivaling the likes of Avengers, Age of Ultron, Aquaman, and Black Adam for me. So, yes, indeed, 37 minutes into this review, join me and Seanie Boy from JTISREBORN as we discuss the 2017 masterpiece that is Logan.
When the man comes around. Have you seen the noir version of the movie?
No, I'm not interested in black and white cuts.
Okay, yeah, neither am I so much. Like, because I feel like if the movie was shot in black and white, that's a different story. But when it's post converted, because it feels like I'm missing something. Like when I saw -1 minus color, I'm just like, I feel like I'm missing stuff. It was cool to see like just once, but I'm like, I'll just go back to the normal version.
Same for the black and white cut of The Mist. I'm just not interested. Logan is a 2017 American superhero film starring Hugh Jackman as the titular character. It is the 10th film in the X-Men film series and is the third and final installment in the Wolverine trilogy, following X-Men Origins Wolverine from 2009 and The Wolverine from 2013. The film takes inspiration from the Old Man Logan comic storyline by Mark Millar and Steve McNiven, which I do have the first volume of, at least. Channel Nerdgasm. Following an aged Wolverine and an extremely ill Charles Xavier, who must defend a young mutant named Laura from the Reavers, led by Donald Pierce and Xander Rice. Film is, of course, was produced by 20th Century Fox, Marvel Entertainment, TSG Entertainment, and the Donner's Company. And the film was directed by James Mangold. Speaking of which, he also directed last year's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And he also previously directed The Wolverine. And he made his debut with the film Heavy from 1995. And he also directed Copland with Sylvester Stallone.
And he's making a Swamp Thing movie.
As long as he makes it R-rated, I'm happy.
No, it's going to be R-rated. That's
okay,
already been confirmed.
Logan premiered on February 17th, 2017, but it was theatrically released March 3rd of 2017. The film was praised for its action scenes, emotional depth, performances, and Mangold's direction, becoming the best reviewed film in the X-Men franchise. It was selected by the National Board of Review as one of the top 10 films of 2017 and nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the 90th Academy Awards, becoming the first live-action superhero film to be nominated for screenwriting, grossing $619.2 million worldwide against a $97 to $127 million budget. It became the third highest grossing R-rated film at its release, and Jackman and Keene reprised their roles in the MCU in the film Deadpool and Wolverine, which I will not be talking about whatsoever after that, so moving on. Before we get into the plot, let's just, again, briefly, spend 30 minutes talking about X-Men movies. So, Sean, you have mentioned a few times that you're not the biggest fan of Marvel. Do you want to elaborate on that? Or at least you're not as much of a fan of Marvel as you are of DC.
No, I still like Marvel. There's a lot of stuff I enjoy. I mean, Spider-Man's a big one for me. Wolverine's always one of my favorites as a kid, and I liked Hulk and all that. And I mean, Hugh Jackman, of course, is such a great performance as the character. Yes, he is a foot taller than his, comic version. Although technically in the latest film, they do show comic accurate Wolverine. It's just 5 foot Hugh Jackman. It looks really often like played as a joke. But yeah, so I mean, I do like Marvel. I just am more of a DC guy, and I've just kind of always been that way. Doesn't mean I dislike Marvel as a whole. I mean, they've made some incredible stories and memorable characters. I spent many years, watching and reading stuff all having to do with Marvel. And, I think in terms of their movies, I think they've kind of oversaturated the market as a whole to an absolute extreme. And it's really kind of tainted things. I think it's it was both a blessing and a curse for the movie industry with what Marvel kind of did. But this is kind of before really that era took off. Well, I mean, it's kind of during that era is really when it was starting to take off.
During the transitionary period.
Right. I mean, without what Fox and the X-Men did, you wouldn't really have the MCU of today.
No.
Because you needed somebody to kind of I mean, I know Stan Lee and that wanted to crossover stuff way back when in the early 2000s with Hulk and Daredevil and, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Now everything's kind of doing it with the multiverse, which is kind of a played out concept at this point. I just got to be upfront and just kind of say it it no longer feels as special anymore. Unless you could do something really kind of interesting with it, like Spider-Verse did. But it is what it is. But so yeah, I don't hate Marvel by any means. I do like them. I just don't like them like I do DC. And plus, trying to keep up in terms of current comics with both companies is just too expensive and too time consuming. So yeah, but I mean, I've seen pretty much all the X-Men movies. There's like 2 I haven't seen all the way through, or 3 I should say.
Yeah, I definitely am more Team DC. In the last 6 or 7 years, I have transitioned over to being more Team DC. For a long time, though, I was pretty hardcore Team Marvel. I preferred a lot of heroes over DC in Marvel. But my favorite comic book superhero of all time, of both DC and Marvel, is still the Incredible Hulk.
Who has been humiliated in the movies for the last 10 years.
Almost.
Actually, really 10 years when you think about it, because the last time we really had any dignity,
was Thor Ragnarok.
Nah, he was still portrayed as big dumb monster. I mean, he still did some
cool stuff.
At
least he was still badass.
Right. I think the last time the Hulk was really interesting was the first Avengers movie, because he was kind of that's when Mark Ruffalo actually tried, and there was actually intrigue with his performance. The scene where he's just kind of talking with the Avengers, and I know Joss Whedon's not really somebody people want to bring up in a positive light these days, but I feel like he was the only one of the recent directors who kind of got the Hulk more than a lot of the others. What Edward Norton and that were doing, I thought was good with the character, but God, I miss the Hulk when he was cool.
Yeah,
Nick, how does it feel, Nick, to be a fan of the Hulk and see him absolutely humiliated as a character for the past 6 or 7 years? Your
Very
favorite
sad.
character.
Same for being a Superman fan. He's just been getting nothing but crapped on for the last few years. So hopefully James Gunn will fix that next year.
Right. But you've heard us. Have you seen Superman and Lois? That's very well received. I don't know if you watched it, but
no, I've heard that one is good. Lord Hellhound from Horror and Metal has seen a fair bit of it. He says it's pretty solid, but just kind of done with CW superhero shows.
Well, this one was actually like the thing is, it only aired on the CW, but it was actually made by like HBO. But
Oh,
like,
okay.
so it's not really made by that CW crew. Yeah, like Tyler Hoechlin, who was started out on it, but this is like a different Earth, and it's kind of its own thing. As Tevye says in the comment section, loves the show. I watched the first season. I thought it was actually really solid. And there's actually like decent production value for TV, and like it's been very well received, like as a series. So like it may be one worth checking out. Like it's a lot better than I anticipated it to be. It's not like bogged down so much by obnoxious CW drama. I don't even know how that network is still like going. Oh God, that's right. You remember that Gotham Knight show that they were trying to put on there that just died on Impact?
Yeah, on arrival. So anyway, back to Marvel. There are still a lot of Marvel characters that I really do like. Although nowadays, I think I prefer like some of the more obscure ones, like Gladiator and Blue Marvel, the Sentry. I do still like a lot of characters that I used to when I was a kid, like Colossus, The Thing, A-Bomb, Red Hulk, The Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, Wolverine, of course.
I did see what your
Nova.
Red Hulk is going to look like, and oh boy, like
I know what I know. Harrison Ford is Red Hulk. I saw that trailer.
I saw like the leak version, and somebody like took a screenshot. It looks like the Hulk's getting head in the image, like because he's just like ah.
But
Sorry,
anyway,
it's late. I haven't slept much today, so this is the stupidest things make me laugh.
so my personal history for Logan, as I kind of briefly mentioned, I when the trailers were coming out for this movie, I wasn't interested. I was not interested. I just I was X-Men out. I did not like First Class, didn't like Days of Future Past, and I actually owned the Wolverine at one point, but I just could not bring myself to watch it. I was just like, nah, not feeling this. And so I already knew of the Old Man Logan storyline, and I know that either Wolverine gets fucked up or he just straight up dies. And even back then, I still had a very firm stance. You know, I don't like it when characters that I like die. It's just not fun for me to watch. But it's funny how this always has an effect on me. As soon as I saw that Logan was going to be R rated, that's when I was like, ooh, so we can finally see these draw some blood. Okay, I'll give them a go. So I saw this in theaters. This was the last X-Men film that I saw in theaters. And let me fucking tell you what. You know, I've stated that 2019 is my favorite film in cinema, or my favorite like year in cinema. Like so many of my favorite films were released in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But 2017 might be a very close second because that year had a bunch of banging fucking movies.
I know Logan and Kong Skull Island came out like right. You know what? That's when I started after the movie, and like one of the first ones I recorded, like when I was initially doing that series, was Logan because I was like, you know what? I'll just go from the movies I saw in January and kind of post them like at once. But that's when that series began on the channel, and Logan was one of the first movies in that batch of recordings I did for that.
So yeah, there was Logan, there was Chips, there was.
Oh God, I forgot about that one.
I like that movie. It's stupid as fuck, but it's funny.
I saw Your Name, which kind of like maybe like changed my perspective on movies in that like because I went into it completely blind, not knowing exactly what it was, and it was like one of those anime movies. So like I actually kind of make it a mission to try and go see anime movies without knowing the plot of them because it's kind of fun to be surprised. Sometimes you get something really good, sometimes you get some really weird stuff, but I've never quite been able to replicate that first experience of seeing that movie and just being like emotionally floored the way I was. Like I'm like a drug addict who got high the first time, has been chasing that high of just like the surprise movie that just kind of gets you out of nowhere. And you know that feeling when you like don't really have much expectations, but then you come away like, oh my God, that was so amazing. I want to relive that experience again for the first time.
There was Kong Skull Island. There was The Shape of Water. There was
She fucks the
Wonder
man.
Woman. There was
that's right. Wonder
Thor
Woman's good.
Ragnarok.
There was Joss
And
Whedon's Justice League.
yeah, there was that too.
You used
Then
to
there
love
was
Justice League.
War for the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, my favorite movie of the year.
Yeah, there was a bunch of banging fucking movies that came out in 2017, and I gotta say, as of right now, I haven't prepared 2017 for Super Cinema Rank, but I think I am gonna definitively state here, Logan is my second favorite film of 2017.
Ooh, what was
So
number
much
one?
so, I saw Logan twice in theaters. Loved it even more. So I gotta say, so I've seen Logan since it's come out, I think about 12 or 15 times. 5 or 6 of those have been in the last week. I've just been eating this movie up. But man, I gotta tell you, Logan is one of the greatest films of all time, in my opinion. Certainly the number one greatest X-Men film, and is one of my like top 5 or 10 favorite superhero films of all time. Logan is a fucking masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. So, do you got any history regarding it?
I mean, I was like, because like, I mean, I have a strong connection away to Hugh Jackman's Wolverine because I was there when he first started. Like, I saw the first X-Men movie in theaters. 2017 was the year we lost Logan and Caesar at the movies. I'm kind of torn which one. I think like I like Caesar's death handled a little bit more because it's a little bit more peaceful. But like Logan's is like, well, because it was meant to be a swan song, but now that he kind of came back after saying, oh, I'm done with it all, I'll play Wolverine again because he just kind of missed it. But Logan was such an impactful one because it was like it felt so distinctly different from the other X-Men movies that had come out beforehand, and it was so refreshing too. Because I was like you, I was kind of X-Men'd out. Like, I mean, they had to do kind of unique things like Deadpool and that to kind of keep us back in, but I didn't understand the continuity. I think setting this one kind of more in the future, where like pretty much everything's kind of wiped out, having basically a clean slate for the most part, and just not going.
Breath of fresh air.
Right, a breath of fresh air after someone took a nasty shit, which was X-Men Apocalypse the year before, aside from the Quicksilver scene, and making it R-rated, calling it Logan, not Wolverine. And when that first trailer hit and they had Johnny Cash playing, and I was like, wow, this is actually looks like a really fucking amazing movie. And it turned out to be a really good movie. So not one of my favorites of all time, but arguably like right up at the top. Like I like probably maybe the best X-Men movie. Like I really did like the first Deadpool movie, and I haven't seen a lot of the other ones in many, many years. But I Logan is one that like anybody can get into. Like you don't really have to watch the other X-Men movies to get that into Logan. I think that's what kind of makes it work. It feels like almost like a Western, like in terms of its tone, like the old gunslinger, and he's at like kind of his last leg, but he still kind of goes out swinging. So like it's an impactful movie. Like when it hits emotionally, it hits very well. So
So 50 something minutes into the review, let's
we haven't even started really. I mean,
let's
technically
get
we
on
did.
the plot. We're gonna jump back and forth between the
Oh, just go ahead and read, Nick. I'll just sit and listen. Make it go by faster.
fine. In 2029, no mutants have been born in 25 years, and an aging Logan suffers as his healing ability is failing. Working as a limousine driver in El Paso, Texas, he and mutant tracker Caliban take care of 97-year-old Charles Xavier, founder of the X-Men, in an abandoned smelting plant in northern Mexico. Xavier suffers from dementia that causes him to have destructive telepathic seizures, one of which injured 600 people and killed most of the X-Men the year prior. Logan reluctantly agrees to escort Gabriela Lopez, a former nurse for biotechnology corporation Alkali Transigen, and a young girl named Laura to Eden, a supposed refuge near the American-Canadian border. After finding Gabriella dead, Logan is confronted by her killer, Donald Pierce, who is Transigen's cyborg chief of security. Played by Boyd Holbrook, by the way. Total piece of shit. Pierce is looking for Laura, who has stowed away in Logan's limo and has powers similar to his. She, Logan, and Xavier escape from Pierce and his Reavers, but Caliban is captured. Pierce tortures Caliban into tracking Laura. Xavier and Logan watch a video on Gabriella's phone, revealing that Transigen created Laura and other children from mutant DNA to become weapons. The children proved challenging to control and were to be executed, but Gabriella and other nurses helped some escape. Xavier reveals to Logan that Laura was created from Logan's DNA and calls her Logan's daughter. In Oklahoma City, Logan discovers that Eden appears in Laura's X-Men comic and tells her it is fictional. The Reavers arrive, but Xavier has a seizure that incapacitates everyone except Logan and Laura, who kill the attackers and inject Xavier with his medication. As they flee, Dr. Xander Rice, the head of Transigen, arrives to help Pierce. Logan, Laura, and Xavier help farmer Will Munson and his family after a traffic incident, accepting an offer of dinner at their home, where Logan drives off enforcers from a corporate farm. Just a guy telling you to get back in your nice truck. You dickhead someplace else. Rice unleashes X-24, a mindless clone of Logan in his prime, created as Transigen's ultimate weapon. X-24 murders Will's family and Xavier before capturing Laura. Caliban sets off grenades, killing himself and several Reavers, but only injuring Pierce. Logan is outmatched by X-24, but Will pins X-24 with his truck before dying of his injuries. Logan and Laura escape with Xavier's body. After burying Xavier, Logan passes out. Laura takes him to a doctor and persuades him to prove that the site in North Dakota is not Eden. There, they find Richter and other Transigen children preparing to cross into Canada. Laura finds an adamantium bullet that Logan has kept since he escaped from the Weapon X facility, which he once considered using to commit suicide. Logan decides not to accompany them, to Laura's dismay. When the Reavers ambush the children, Logan takes an overdose of a serum given to him by Richter that temporarily enhances his healing abilities and boosts his strength, in a scene that the director calls Logan's Run. With Laura's help, he slaughters most of the Reavers before the serum wears off. I'm pretty much just going to call it the cinematic depiction of a berserker rage.
Rage. Gotta sound like those Godzilla video games. Save the Earth.
Let's see. Oh yeah, before the serum wears off. As Pierce holds Richter at gunpoint, Rice tells Logan, who killed Rice's father years ago at the Weapon X facility, that no new mutants have been born due to genetically engineered crops created by Transigen and distributed through the world's food supply. Logan, having found a gun, shoots Rice dead and injures Pierce. X-24 fights Logan as the children combine their powers to kill Pierce and the remaining Reavers. Richter uses his powers to flip a truck onto X-24, but X-24 frees himself and impales Logan on a large tree branch, mortally wounding him. Laura loads Logan's revolver with the adamantium bullet and shoots X-24 in the head, killing him. Near death, Logan tells Laura not to become the weapon she was made to be, and after she tearfully acknowledges him as her father, Logan dies peacefully in Laura's arms. She and the children bury Logan, with Laura reciting as his eulogy the closing speech from the film Shane, which Logan, Charles, and her had watched in the Oklahoma City hotel. Before the children depart, Laura tilts the cross on his grave marker to create an X, thus ending the film.
Do 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 when the man comes around. Do.
So, Seanie Boy, how about this plot?
The plot is actually like, I mean, having kind of taking influence from the old man Logan storyline, I think, I mean, it's kind of one of my pros of it, like having a more personal story. I'm kind of at the point now where like people just keep going bigger and bigger and bigger, and I feel kind of less and less. Like I feel more when the story is a little bit more personal, and sometimes it doesn't have to be like the most massive stakes in the world, but you can kind of just bring it down to something a little bit more ground level. And I think that's what makes this movie stand pretty much above the rest of like the X-Men films. I mean, arguably the two best ones are the R-rated ones, like the first Deadpool and Logan, because they're much kind of smaller movies compared to some of the other ones. They have a R-rated grit to them. They tried something unique with the source material compared to some of the other stuff that's been out in the market for a while, and really kind of leaning into that R rating and having some kind of sweet touching moments in there too. So there's actually some real emotional story beats to it that the other X-Men films, just none of them were able to like match the levels of like they were in this film. So and I think like Logan kind of connecting with his daughter, we see the thing that made him strong is making him like sick and weak. We see Charles Xavier, we see a world pretty much without most mutants, and it's a bleak future as they show. I mean, not like end of the world like we've seen in some of the other stuff, but like feels kind of empty. But then again, we didn't really see too much of the world. It was kind of like more like isolated. They weren't really in too many big cities or anything like that. It was just kind of a smaller, more focused storyline. Like, look, here's Logan in like the desert. Here's him out in the woods and all that. Like, they do stop at the one place where Charles has his like little attack on everything, where he has a seizure, and then
Oklahoma
so
City.
Oklahoma City. So, um, yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I like the story of Logan. I think it's having it more personal like this, and really just kind of leaning into that full blown R rating and showcasing like Logan's biggest flaws as a character, like right at up at the forefront. It is a little hard sometimes trying to watch like the person I used to see just go full blown berserker all the time and just whoop everybody's ass. Just to see him kind of weak and kind of decaying and just kind of a shell of his former self. And I think it really does work for Wolverine's character when Mangold did this. It did not work for Indiana Jones because that's supposed to be a fun adventure serial character, and having the jaded, cynical, like doesn't have much in him type things may work for Wolverine because that's, one of the core things of his character. He's kind of a loner and all that. But doing that with another character that's meant to be like fun, upbeat movie serial tributes doesn't quite work, James. But we're here to talk about Logan. But we did bring up Mangold directing other stuff. So, but yeah, this is a much better movie than what I saw last year. Like it's engaging, like it's an engaging film, and just good shit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love this movie's plot. So I watched this film last night with James Mangold's commentary for the first time, and there was a lot of moments. I'm not sure if I would recommend the commentary because, as I'll discuss later, there's some things that he doesn't really talk about that's kind of frustrating, but I'll talk about that later. But yeah, he did state that he like really wanted to do something very different with this film compared to not just the rest of the X-Men films, but he talked about wanting to do something different compared to other big summer blockbuster superhero films. Because,
Mm-hmm.
this year we had Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and Wonder Woman that came out the same year, and Thor Ragnarok. And yeah, he wanted to do something different compared to just big, flashy, lots of special effects, lots of loud music, and bombastic action scenes. Yeah, compared to all others that came out this year, and even other X-Men films, this movie does feel like a big not necessarily back to basics, but it just feels in a good way like a big stake, small scale film. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is a very personal movie. The stakes aren't quite nearly as high. I mean, in the end, it's an escort slash rescuing kids film,
Mm-hmm.
but those can be captivating and engaging in and of themselves just as much, if not even more so, than a several thousand-year-old mutant that's trying to destroy the world and remake it in his image. And without a doubt, this movie blows something like that out of the water. And it takes a talented director and especially a good script and talented actors just doing what they do best,
Mhm.
playing characters that they know how to play, and just getting the characters hooked, getting them intrigued, and taking them on one hell of a ride. And this movie succeeds 100,000%. I love it. Well, Disney was not wanting to take any notes from anybody else. They think they think their shit doesn't stink. But
Oh,
that's
did you hear about? I was gonna say, did you hear the Disney lawsuit where they're trying to throw out a wrongful death lawsuit because somebody signed up for like Disney Plus terms, like for a 1 month free trial, like years ago. So, but under arbitration, we should not be held accountable, even though like the guy's wife, I don't know if it's his wife or like the husband, one of them died due to an allergic reaction. They were asking to make sure if the food was okay. So they're trying to have the lawsuit thrown out because somebody signed up for like Disney Plus a few years ago. So that apparently grants them arbitration against like everything else. So like they could legitimately like you could die at their thing for their negligence and but like it's good. Like they're gonna get sued. Like there's no way out of it. But it's one of the most insane lawsuits like I had ever seen. It just popped up this week. So
moving on.
I just
So,
got to bring it up. I'm sorry, Nick. So because I'm like,
how
huh?
many pros do you have? I have 13.
I do not have 13. I wrote down like 6, but like a lot of my see the thing is when I have a whole number like this, they all kind of mingle together. And he's gone.
Getting my pros.
Oh, okay. I'm like, what the hell is he doing?
And I need
So,
to stand up for a quick second.
yeah, I've been sitting like all day, like at work and that too. So like typing away. Um,
Okay.
yes. So I mean, I have like 6 kind of right here. I may add more, but they're all kind of
Alrighty.
mingled
So,
together. You want? Can I
pro
just rapid
number
fire through?
one.
Or you go ahead and rapid fire through like half your list, and then I'll do my half, and then you finish off.
Pro number one is the tone of this film. Now, to talk about something that was discussed in my Alien 3/Alien Resurrection film, this movie does have a fair bit in common with Alien 3. Both films have a very brown, bronze, or goldish color scheme to them. Like, this movie isn't quite Godzilla 2014 or Han Solo levels of brown, but it is a very brown film. But I think that adds itself to the film's tone. And the biggest thing that Logan and Alien 3 have in common, they're both very dour and not very joyous films, to say the least. And for both examples, I think it's very appropriate. Another big thing that these two have in common is that they're swan song slash send offs for their main characters. This film, of course, for Wolverine. Um, yeah, the tone is very grim. It's very bleak. It's very depressing and dour. And it definitely does capture the look and spirit of the Old Man Logan comics. A lot of desert terrains. Everybody's older and grizzled and beat up and war weary. It's just a very kind of unpleasant, unkempt, and unclean film. Which, again, in his commentary, James Mangold stated that's what he wanted. It was an intentional look for this film to look grittier and grubbier compared to a lot of other superhero films. And I think it's a huge breath of fresh air.
Right. It works for the story they're trying to tell. And Wolverine's that type of character that story like really lends itself to. Like that's just
Absolutely, with him being a very rugged type of
right. It
guy.
doesn't work with every character, as we established earlier with, Luke Skywalker in the comment section, because that's not supposed to be this gritty, rugged. That's supposed to be an optimistic, hopeful character. Wolverine, has some gray areas to him. So
Literally and figuratively, as we'll
yeah.
talk about later. But yeah, I do like the tone for this film. And this will lead me into my next pro. These kind of go hand in hand. Pro number 2 is the pacing of this film, I think, is pitch perfect. James Mangold again stated that he did want this movie to be a slower paced film. And he stated that with this film's R rating, that was pretty much the ultimate green light to just go ahead and do whatever he wanted. So that way they didn't have to have things for kids to enjoy in this film, which I respect and appreciate. They weren't going to market this movie to kids. Hell fucking no. Ironically, though, I actually do think kids could watch this movie and enjoy the hell out of it. But yeah, the pacing to me is perfect. I would not necessarily say that this movie has a slow pace, but it takes its time. It moves at a leisurely pace. It's not just go, 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 go. It has moments when it's like that, but that's during the action scenes, which is appropriate. Because this is a much more human, character-driven, and character-focused story, it has those moments where the movie just kind of stops and takes a minute and breathes and lets the actors actually act and give good performances to sink their hooks into the audience and get them invested. Like James Mangold talks about the scene when Logan and Professor X are first in that tank. It's a 6-minute scene of just two characters talking. There's not really any jump cuts. There's no quick editing. There's no flashbacks. There's no flashy whim-whams and flim-flams. It's just two very talented actors just talking. But their dialogue is so well written and their performances are so strong, it just gets you invested. You want to watch these guys just talk. Almost kind of makes me think, I'd almost think Quentin Tarantino may have had something to do with this movie.
But his dialogue has to be more over the top, though.
Sure, but even then, still, I mean, a Quentin Tarantino X-Men movie done in the style of Logan, that'd be kind of cool. Beside the point. Yeah, so the pace is very deliberate. It's slow when it needs, or slower when it needs to be. It's quick when it needs to be. It's very cinematic, and it's very well done. And the tone also lends itself, because it's so grim and because it's so bleak. The fact that it takes its time, it kind of has time to wallow in that bleakness and misery, and just kind of makes you feel just a little bit worse whenever there's some fucked up shit that's showcased in a good way. Sean?
Okay, well, I'm just going to kind of like reiterate some of that too. So my pro number one is like the R rating, which I guess goes hand in hand with the tone. Making this an R rating was the best choice they could have, because now we could really go unhinged with Wolverine as a character, because a lot of the PG-13 stuff was held back. Although,
X-Men 2 kind of works. No, that kind of
it works for that. These were comics made for kids, but for this particular story, it needed to be rated R. We needed to see the violence. We needed to see this man at his lowest point ever. We needed to see him kind of at the end of his road. We needed to see just kind of like the more heavy stakes with it, and really kind of getting that brutal sense of violence kind of showcases that too. And plus, it makes the action look cooler when it's rated R and hard violent. I mean, that's another one of my pros, like the action scenes when they do happen. So they're not the greatest I've ever seen, but like when people are getting sliced up, and I like the part where it was like X-24 cuts that one dude's like head clean off, which is pretty sweet. And of course, Laura, when she is just walks out with that decapitated head, I'm like, damn, this is pretty awesome. She's like just rabid, just like slicing and dicing people like crazy. And it's just this kid doing it, which is both kind of funny but also really awesome at the same time. So
and kind of fucked up.
It is, but I have a dark sense of humor, so I appreciate some of the excessive violence from children in these types of things. So yeah, I mean, like I said, the R rating and the tone really kind of work in this thing's favor, I think, because some of the other X-Men movies just feel like boring, generic superhero movies that just feel like everyone's going through the motions. Like you can predict everything that happens a mile away. And while the story here, it's not entirely like unpredictable with a lot of the stuff that necessarily
I wouldn't say
happens.
that.
Like it feels like, okay, you kind of like going into this, I'm like, oh, this is Hugh Jackman's swan song. I'm like, I know he's probably just gonna die.
Oh, that's true. I'll give you that. Yeah.
At the end of that, so and like a lot of the stuff, it's like it does feel kind of like the Last of Us video game with Wolverine and his daughter in this.
During the commentary, James did actually say that when the trailers were first dropping, people on Twitter were sending him comparison screenshots between this movie and The Last of Us. And James did say that he had actually never played The Last of Us nor even seen it while he was making this movie. He played it after the film came out.
And he's
And
like,
he was like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, I do see the similarities. And then
mhm.
people were asking him, could you maybe do a Last of Us movie? But then James is like, no, I already did. It's called Logan. Good enough.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
yeah, I see it.
yeah, we almost got a Sam Raimi Last of Us movie, which I would have liked to have seen, but we'll see. I think he's making a horror movie next, so. But moving on, go ahead and get your next pro out of the way. I don't have nearly as many as you, so maybe you say something and it'll inspire me to add more. Because I don't know what really else to kind of add. I mean, the next one I was going to really say was like I was going to just kind of like highlight all the performances in the movie, just kind of rolling into one.
Pro number 3 is Logan / the Wolverine.
Hugh Jackman.
As Hugh Jackman's swan song to the X-Men franchise.
Until he came back 7 years later.
Wow, does he absolutely knock it out of the park. This is without a doubt his best performance of the entire series, in my opinion. Blowing everything else. Again, X-Men 2 and X-Men 3, I do think come pretty close.
Can we just say Hugh Jackman never phoned it in as Wolverine?
Like, no, absolutely not.
Even in
like Days of Future Past, didn't really care for it, but Hugh Jackman did do pretty good as Wolverine.
The man never phones in as Wolverine. Like he brings it every single time. The movie movies around him may not be the best, but he is never phoning it in. He just like brings his A game every single time. And yes, I did see that Deadpool and Wolverine did make $1 billion.
Fuck, god damn it. Oh, okay, so yeah, I would agree that yeah, Hugh Jackman never phoned it in as Wolverine. But still, without a doubt, and that's something that so another pro that I have is the violence / the R rating. Yes, I would agree that one of the biggest things that an R rating allows for film is no restraints. And this is why I will always complain about certain films that don't need to be PG-13, like RoboCop does not need to be PG-13. Terminator, even though I like Terminator Genesis, Terminator does not need to be PG-13. And there are certain both Marvel and DC characters that do not need to be PG-13. And Wolverine is one of the biggest. Even though, again, there are a couple X-Men films that work despite the PG-13 rating, like X-Men 2 and X-Men 3.
I think it depends too, because we got to remember too that these were characters made for kids first and foremost. So a lot of their stories.
Even then, time still changes characters,
right? But still, like, I mean, they can be in like depends on like the story you're trying to tell. Like for a story like this, it needs to be R-rated. For something like the first two X-Men movies, that should be PG-13. It doesn't need to be super R-rated. Sometimes there's movies that can be just needlessly like edgelordy R-rated, and it just didn't really need to be. Like, you know what I mean? Like something so jaded and cynical. I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. Like those really bad, like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Like Winnie the Pooh is like the most innocent character. Like, let's make it a horror film, and it's just not very good at all. It just feels like so wrong with this type of character. So
anyway, what was I talking about?
How the Last
Jedi. Oh, right. So yeah, the violence. So with this movie being R-rated, that also allows the fucked up shit and the really emotional moments to hit that much harder. Had this movie been PG-13, it would have been a complete failure, in my opinion. It just would not have been able to tell the story that it wants to tell had it had restraints. The emotional scenes wouldn't have been as impactful. Action scenes wouldn't have been as strong. And the tone and the pacing just would not have worked. So yeah, this movie did absolutely need to be R-rated. And I guess some people kind of didn't really criticize this film, but they were kind of talking shit about, oh, this movie only was R-rated because Deadpool was so successful. And while that may be somewhat true, people kind of talk about it like it's a bad thing. I personally don't. But I mean, yeah, it is kind of true. If we hadn't have had the Deadpool film from 2016, this movie probably wouldn't exist. But regardless, so back to Hugh Jackman. Yeah, his performance as Wolverine in this movie, it's the best of the entire franchise. Logan just says a lot with his face, his body language, and his appearance. Like you can tell the last 20 years for Wolverine have been pretty rough. And like he has a very unkempt, scraggly gray beard, scraggly gray hair. He's got gnarly ass scars all over his face and his arms and his torso.
You forgot his Just for Men hair dye. I said because he's got the gray, and I'm like, you forgot his Just for Men hair dye. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't get it.
No, it's literally like it's a brand called Just for Man. It's like hair dye. So like dye your hair when you're getting gray. Hair dye. Like he missed his hair dye.
Okay, I get it. But his eyes too and his face. I think he smiles maybe twice in this entire movie. So you can just take one look at Wolverine and just know immediately, wow, he hates his fucking life. He is one miserable bastard. And yeah, he is one miserable bastard for a good chunk of this movie. Logan looks like shit in this film. For 95% of this movie, he just looks like utter dog shit. Totally different from the Wolverine that we've seen for the rest of the series. That like the worst of it is once he gets out of the hospital and he's talking to Laura in that little truck, when he's like looking her dead in the eyes, his face and his skin is red and he's glistening with sweat because he's just in so much chronic pain. His eyes are totally bloodshot and his eye sockets are almost purple. He says it. I am fucked up. Yeah, he is fucked up. And Logan does get his ass kicked a fair bit for a good chunk of this movie. But still, despite his extreme age and his failing health and his powers getting much weaker, he does still try as hard as he can to put up a good fight for the whole film. And it is very satisfying, as brief as it is, when we do get to see this old and experienced Logan get a little taste of his prime physique back, and he's just fucking people up left and right. But yeah, without a doubt, this is Hugh Jackman's best performance as Wolverine of the entire franchise. And it's a shame that Hugh Jackman did not win an Oscar for Best Actor for this movie. Big shame. Because I honestly think this is one of like the top 5 best performances of any superhero film for the last 26 years. Without a doubt.
Brings it every time. That's why he's so good in the role. And the fact that he kept that passion for it for as long as he did. Because like when you think about a lot of actors, I mean, he kind of wanted to go out on top. That's why he did Logan. Because I know he was getting older and all that as well. And he just like he was like, okay, look, I've been doing this how many times? I played the character so many times. Let's go out on a high note. And you have to respect that from somebody who's just like, you don't want to overstay your welcome too much, but like Wolverine was always kind of like the main glue of the entire X-Men franchise. He just has been. Like he is like kind of the heart of it as it's kind of gone on through different movies and all that. Other characters have kind of gotten the spotlight, but let's be real. Wolverine was the first 3 X-Men movies were more so Wolverine movies than anybody else. So technically first 4 because you have X-Men Origins. And then what was the one after that? Oh, First Class.
First Class, yeah.
But then Wolverine steals the movie anyways with his one line. And then you get the Wolverine. And then Days of Future Past with Wolverine taking charge. And then what was the one after that? Apocalypse?
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, Deadpool happened. And of
That's
course,
a
who gets
spin-off.
mentioned? Of course, who happens? Like, Deadpool's like, whose balls do I have to fondle? It rhymes with Wolverine. And of course, he has the Hugh Jackman face. Wolverine there. X-Men Apocalypse. Wolverine has like one scene in there where he just murders everyone. So steals the movie again. And then Logan. Yeah. Like, he legitimately every single time. And then you have Deadpool 2, opening scene. What does Deadpool talk about? Who's so great? Wolverine Logan. So not until Dark Phoenix that he doesn't get anything, but Dark Phoenix and, what's the last one? New Mutants. They died. So, I mean, who cares? They were dead IPs. See what happens when you don't acknowledge the greatness that is Hugh Jackman, your movies fail. You only chew the bomb.
Yeah. So, pro number
4,
5 is Patrick Stewart as Professor X.
Yeah, Hugh and Patrick are pros in mine too. So whatever you say, I'm pretty much just going to agree and thumbs up.
I probably would also have to say too that this is Patrick Stewart's best performance as Professor X for the whole series.
Mm-hmm.
That's not exactly saying as much because, say what you want about, again, the rest of the franchise. Patrick Stewart also did always bring it as Professor X. He just totally owns and embodies the role. Like, I could not think of a better actor, still to this day, cannot think of a better actor to play Professor X other than Patrick Stewart.
He was perfectly cast.
He was perfectly cast. And again, like with Hugh, this was a really good swan song for Patrick to end his career on. This kind of is a really different kind of Professor X that we've been used to seeing. Like beforehand, Professor X was always a very, very calm, very friendly, very approachable, and just, polite, respectable man beforehand. But now in this fucked up, bleak world, this is a very angry, a very kind of crazy and bitter and sad Professor X that we've never seen before. But it's also, again, a very big breath of fresh air. Like, damn, he really must be fucked off if he's acting like this. And it is also kind of sad because, the most powerful telepath in the history of Marvel Comics, Professor X, now getting to the end of his life and his powers getting out of control. And
his greatest strength has become his greatest weakness.
Exactly. And it is a scary thought. Like, what if somebody who was as powerful of a telepath as Professor X did get dementia or Alzheimer's? That would be very fucking scary. Somebody with that strong, that level of telepathic power was then being rendered to be not able to control that power. It would be scary as fuck. But yeah, Patrick does a great job. I think he perfectly plays somebody that has dementia or Alzheimer's because, people with dementia or Alzheimer's, specifically more with dementia, because that's just more so like a symptom of old age. Because I guess he's 97 years old in this movie. Like, damn.
He's like Tobin Bell as Jigsaw. He just gets older and older and just sticks around.
Right, yeah. Now with dementia and Alzheimer's, they do have a lot of like thin areas where they cross over, but there is a distinct difference. But with dementia, people have their good days and their bad days. Days where they're pretty coherent, they have a good head screwed on their shoulders, and they can remember all the stuff that's happened to them in their lives. And then there's their bad days where their grasp on reality is really slipping and they don't know left from right, up or down, what's wrong and what's bad, so on and so forth. And, Patrick does a great job showcasing that with Professor X. Like, sometimes he's cool, calm, collected, like the Professor X that we know. And then other times he's just acting crazy and acting like somebody that we've never met or seen before. Like, The new quesalupa from Taco Bell. Get it with chicken. Get it with steak. It's the next big thing. Make way, sir. I said make way. You're the one who puts me to sleep. Why don't you blow on him for good luck? Fuck off, Logan. That was quite jarring for me to hear Patrick Stewart swear like that in this movie.
I mean, Patrick Stewart has sweared in some things before.
Yeah, he was the narrator for Ted.
No, wasn't he also in that movie, Green Room or whatever it was, where he was like, I think I actually have Green Room on the shelf.
Not a nice man in that movie.
No, not says some things that YouTube will deplatform you for.
And it was jarring, but again, it was oddly fitting. Like, yeah, this is Professor X at his lowest point. This is a defeated, sad, fucked off Professor X, and Patrick Stewart does a great job playing him. And his best scene is his final scene, the whole speech that he made before X-24 stabbed him, and then that final scene when he's in the truck and in his final moments, he looks up at Wolverine and he just says, "Our Sunseeker." And then he passes away in Logan's arms. Like, well, for a number of reasons, I was like this. I didn't cry when Professor X died, but it did kind of hit me. Like, oh, damn. Oh, damn. A beloved character from my childhood. He's gone. Fuck. We'll talk about that scene a little later.
Where are we at now, sir? I lost my pros and cons. Oh, there.
Pro number 6 for me. Anything to add about Professor X?
I mean, you're pretty much just summarizing things like Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart bring their A game. So I'll give you that one. The next pro for me, I'm going to jump in. Daphne Keane, X-23.
That's mine too.
And you know what? Originally, I guess in the scripts, they had her like saying a lot more lines, but they're just like, no, let's cut it down to be more nonverbal. And I think it works so much better by not having her talk like the whole time and rely kind of on the visuals and that too. And like she brings a fierce intensity to this character, but also kind of this vulnerability and kind of innocence to her. And I think it really works. I guess Millie Bobby Brown auditioned for the part, but I'm glad it went to Daphne Keane instead because I think
she probably would have done a good job though, but it would have just been kind of more 11.
Right.
That's like a bad thing, but that's not X-23.
Right. I think Daphne Keane just really kind of knocked it out of the park in this movie for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. My next pro is X-23 / Laura, played by Daphne Keane. I do believe this was her debut film.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other thing that I know of that she's been in since is The Acolyte. Great. But anyway, so...
You mentioned Disney Star Wars. I got to go hide.
Yeah, Daphne Keane does a fantastic job as Laura. Yeah, she does do a lot of really good acting with just her face because for literally the first 98 minutes of this movie, she's, aside from screaming and shrieking and growling, she doesn't speak a single word until 98 minutes into the film. And then she just starts rapid fire, spit firing words left and right. But still, she does do a lot of acting with just her face and her body language. James described her as this, fierce, wild child killing machine. But then there's also that curious, childlike aspect to her that is very endearing and is very captivating. Like, yeah, she's just a curious animal almost at times. And whenever she's not fighting or being tortured and experimented on, when she's just interacting with the outside world, she just eats it up and soaks it all in. Like when she is interacting with a very loving, caring family in a quiet, pleasant, loving environment, she just eats it up, just like Professor X does too. And yeah, Laura, Daphne does a lot of good acting with her face. She has very wide, big eyes. Like and she has a good like fierce animalistic expression that's totally believable, but then her curious and inquisitive looks on her face are also very believable too. Yeah, she doesn't have as much dialogue, and it's both Spanish but also broken English. But it works. She does a great job acting all throughout this movie. Couldn't have cast a better little girl to play X-23. She does a great job. I got to plug my charger in. So go ahead, Sean.
All right, so got those actors out of the way. So pretty much, like I said, the acting, the tone. My next pro, I guess, is the more personal story for this thing, and then I got kind of one more. It all kind of ties together.
Go ahead and talk about them. I'll be right back. I got to switch out some laundry.
Okay, so the more personal story for Logan, as opposed to just like something kind of more grounded, a little bit more gritty, I think really works in the film's favor. It's not as big, extravagant as some of the other X-Men films, but it's far more interesting because it does the whole less is more approach. You don't always need to throw so much stuff into a movie, and yeah, you can have as much spectacle as possible, but if you don't have an interesting story or characters to really get behind, your spectacle can only go so far. And despite so many big, huge, like random CGI battles I've seen, like the X-Men movies, I just oftentimes did not care. Here, I did care. I mean, because I'd followed Logan's storyline since, the first X-Men movie, and just kind of seeing him kind of at the end of his run, it is a little bit hard to watch at times. Like there's some really heavy stuff in here with him and, with Charles and being pretty much the last two of the, I guess, original X-Men left anymore, and just seeing how the world has kind of changed, and like him just kind of struggling to kind of get by anymore, and how the mutant kind is pretty much just wiped out at this point, and like you feel kind of empty and like left out, and just kind of like he's a dying man. He's pretty much the last of the mutants, or the last of the X-Men left, and just trying to like still keep fighting till the end. Like there's something really kind of touching and kind of moving about it. So which gives me into kind of my final pro of the thing, and it all kind of wraps itself up in a nice little bow. For me, like I said, it's the real emotional moments that this movie has that is kind of what kind of keeps people coming back to it. It's like my favorite aspects of it. I mean, killing off a character is kind of a risky thing sometimes, because sometimes it can work and other times it can really backfire. I think an example where it backfired in a major movie was in Scream 5 when they killed off like David Arquette's character Dewey, who was by far the best character in that whole series. And it felt so jaded and cynical, and it wasn't like used super heroically, like, oh, he sacrificed himself. No, he just went out like an idiot. They all could have survived. And it just kind of really did a big disservice to the character. And that can sometimes happen. Or, I mean, going back to the jaded, cynical route, like Alien 3, look at what they did with Newt and Michael Bihn's character at the beginning of that film. Oh yeah, remember everything we went through in the last movie? Well, they're all just kind of dead to start. So everything that we fought for, it's just kind of thrown in the dumpster, and now it's just Ripley left. See, like in that example, like it just doesn't really fully work, and it kind of does a disservice. But here, when we do eventually get to that final bit with like Logan, like it's a genuinely touching scene. Like he died. I mean, he was already kind of sick and dying as it is, because this is a man at the end of his life. But just kind of like there's some moving, like hopeful moments in there too. And I really like kind of the smaller moments in this movie. That's one of my favorite bits is where they help that family and they're just kind of having a meal together. And then Charles is just like, this is the most enjoyable night I've had in years. And it's a nice little bit to it. But then, of course, it goes wrong, and like the dark stuff happens with, Wolverine's clone coming in and just annihilating everyone on sight, and some strong, awesome, bloody violence. And like that's kind of hard to watch. Like, oh, this poor family, they're just kind of showing some compassion and kind of goodwill towards others. Like it's a hopeful scene, but then they end up like the innocent must suffer in this, as a result of all the stuff kind of going on. And like there's a kind of a meaningful tragedy to all that stuff. So like that stuff like really works for me. And like I said, getting to the big finale where Logan eventually kind of passes away and don't be what they made you. And, Daphne Keene's crying and the music and all that, and the way she turns it into like a little X right there. Like, I think it's a nice big, like, fitting finale. And in all honesty, if we didn't get any more X-Men movies after this, I would have been perfectly fine with it, because I was pretty checked out, like, by the time this, like, kind of came around, and I think it felt like a good swan song. It did something a little bit differently, and it gave, like, Hugh Jackman a really solid send-off as his final time playing the character in the original X-Men series. So, and technically, this is the last time he plays this version of this character. So it really is the swan song of his time as the Wolverine we got to know for close to, like, almost 20 years at that point. So, he was great. The cast is really solid with, Patrick Stewart giving a really good performance in here with the whole dementia aspect. I'm like, sometimes, like, because he actually is older now, I sometimes wonder, like, does he actually have dementia? Because, like, you kind of forget because he's really just putting out a performance. But I don't know. Sometimes when actors are older, you kind of, like, I've seen dementia in a lot of people. I've had family members with it, and it's a hard thing to watch, and just kind of seeing him go through it is kind of tough. And like I said, Daphne Keene's really good too. The way she kind of communicates a lot of her stuff non-verbally, and it's just all in her facial expressions. And you got the tone with the R rating, some really cool action bits. Like, I mean, in terms of, like, the hand-to-hand combat, because there's no, like, big immersive, like, chase scene or anything like that, but it's just kind of the down and gritty hand-to-hand combat. It's like a whole, like, old school, like, Western gunslinger thing. And it's all about kind of the characterization, and it doesn't really need to be some big epic action extravaganza, because it's not that type of story, but there is action in there. And when it does pick up, I'm like, okay, this is pretty sweet. So yeah, I mean, like I said, those are basically my pros in a nutshell. Like I said, it's a solid movie.
Alrighty. Pro number 7 for me is the villains. There's not as much to say about the villains. We have the Reavers, which are cybernetically enhanced grunts, essentially. But they do all look pretty badass, and they look like a pretty nasty, gnarly group of unpleasant assholes. And seeing them get fucked the fuck up is pretty satisfying, but they do make for an intimidating villain force. We have Boyd Holbrook as Donald Pierce. Man, is this dude one despicable piece of shit. Boyd Holbrook is really good at playing villains, and he's just really good at playing asshole douchebag villains, because he was also in
Sandman,
Justified City Primeval, and his character is a villain in that show. And I mean, I didn't like the show very much, but
he was in The Predator, the movie everyone hates.
Yeah, well, I like him in The Predator, and I do like The Predator. So moving on. He does still have that douchebag asshole, just exudes being an unlikable character type persona in that film. Although here it's at its highest, in my opinion. Like, to me, this is Boyd Holbrook's best performance in any film or show that he's been in. Like, this is top tier asshole villain. Like, he's not a very complex character. He's just an asshole. He's an asshole who seemingly enjoys torturing and killing kids. Yeah, pretty unlikable character. And his death is very satisfying at the very end, at the hands of the same kids that he helped torture and mutilate. So it's very fitting and appropriate. Yes. Not much to say about Xander Rice. He's just an asshole, unlikable, mad scientist, but he does exude that snobby, know-it-all piece of shit, mad scientist who just wants to, almost like Dr. Frankenstein in a way. He's just so obsessed with his work. He doesn't care who he has to mutilate, who he has to kill, who he has to treat like shit, as long as he gets what he wants when he wants it. He's a total despicable piece of shit. So yeah, villains are simple. They're just unlikable piece of shit assholes, and it's appropriate for this kind of story. Ooh. Oh yeah, that was in his ass. Let's see. Very carefully.
Look at Richard Grant. Boy, he was in this movie too. I was just like seeing what else I know him from. So
really? Pro number 8 for me Is the music done by who? Marco Beltrami, I think. Yeah, Marco Beltrami. Marco Beltrami is an American composer of film and television. He has worked in a number of genres, including horror, Scream, Mimic, The Faculty, Resident Evil, The Woman in Black, Carrie, and A Quiet Place, action, Terminator 3, Live Free or Die Hard, and World War Z, science fiction, I, Robot, ooh, nice, and superhero films, Hellboy, The Wolverine, Logan, and Venom, Let There Be Carnage. So he's definitely been around. And yeah, he's a great composer. Kind of underrated in my opinion, but yeah, really solid composer. And I probably would have to say that Logan might be his best work in my opinion. It's definitely a very varied score. It has moments when the music is very kind of somber and soft and quiet, so it accentuates a very somber, quiet, and depressing scene. Um, there's moments when there's bombastic action, so it's fast paced and action action packed and
sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Talk about the music for a sec. God damn it.
The music in Logan, I don't remember as much of the score as much as I do like the Johnny Cash stuff from the trailers and like at the end of the film. But the only musical elements I really kind of remember, I just watched the film, was just kind of like the ending with like Logan and his daughter there, and you hear it like kind of quiet and somber. Again, feels very much like a Western film, and it kind of works for the scene it's in. So that's really all I got in terms of music. Of course, the Johnny Cash stuff. I remember when the first trailer I saw, like they had her playing, ding, 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 and it just really kind of worked for the trailer that they were like trying to showcase. And then it ends with like The Man Comes Around, so which is a really good song. So I mean, I like a lot of Johnny Cash's stuff. I mean, those ones, Ring of Fire. There's another one.
That was him.
What, Johnny Cash?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't know. But he was a lot older, like when he's saying like "Man Comes Around." So, but it was Johnny Cash. So, and Nick has left me right here alone with you all. Oh my goodness. Where are we at now? So I don't know. I'm kind of tired at this point, people, to be honest. Like it's after midnight here now. I've been up for like 24 hours almost. So I'm running on fumes here. But we will continue until we finish this thing. So, but yeah. Music is fine.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, he's back. So I ran like I padded up as much as I could.
Yeah, the score for this film, yeah, it's very varied. It's heartfelt when it needs to be. It's action-packed and bombastic when it needs to be. And there's one piece of music that I'll talk about when I get to another pro real quick, so I'll save that. But yeah, Marco Beltrami was at the top of his game for this film's score. Couldn't have asked for a better job. Pro number
9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
9. This movie has some gnarly fucking kills. Now, because this movie is violent as fuck, like it's a different kind of violent than Deadpool. Deadpool is very over the top and comedic with
right. This one's raw and like
this one's raw, violent, visceral, and vicious.
You know what I describe the difference as, Nick? I'd say this is more like The Raid versus like Kung Fu Hustle, which is Deadpool. Like in terms of like the martial arts standpoint, like the goofier stuff versus like the really hard hitting violence of the Raid movies.
More so the first Raid movie, but yeah, I'd have to agree.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this movie is very vicious and it's very appropriate. And there are some really, again, because it's R-rated, there's no restraints. So we get to see some fucked up kills. And we get to see some. So this will go into Actually, no, I'll save that. Yeah, there's some fucked up kills. When Laura walks out with that dude's head, she just tosses it on the ground at the Reaver's feet. You're just like, oh. The opening scene when Logan's getting carjacked by a bunch of pendejos on the side of the road, he just let's see, where is it? Just
Howdy, Jack. How you doing, buddy?
Slowly brings his claws out. What the hell? Oh, here it is.
What's the matter? Wolverine can't get it up.
Is only 2/3 out of his hand. He's still trying to slice people up left and right. But then when they get him on the ground, they're kicking the shit out of him. All of a sudden, they I guess step on his head too hard. Then he gets pissed off and he slices the dude's arm off with the shotgun. But then he slices up some dude and he stabs him right through the throat into their head, through their mouths, and you hear the guy just go, another dude gets stabbed right through the eyes and his head. Another guy gets his throat sliced open. And then later on, when Laura...
Another man gets his dick sliced off. Just kidding.
Huh?
I made a joke. I'm like, and then another moment, some man gets his dick sliced off. Probably.
Probably, yeah. Well, I mean, with Laura's foot claws, I'm sure that was a thing. But yeah, she's slicing open throats and stabbing people in the eyes. Logan stabs one of the federales through the head with his claws, trying to save Charles. And then the hotel scene when Charles is having his seizure, Logan's slowly going through, fighting through the seizure, and he's stabbing people through their heads, stabbing people in the spine. One dude, he literally stabs him through the back of his head, and you see the claws just come right out of his face. It's gnarly, and the guy's face as he's dying is like, eh. Let's see. The main farmer, Jackson X-24, just totally slices the guy's head clean off with one swipe.
Mm-hmm.
And Pierce, he's got a pretty fucked up kill. He gets frozen, electrocuted, and then strangled and stabbed with a whole bunch of plants and vines till he's buried in the ground. Then there's another Reaver who just gets totally turned into a human pincushion with twigs and pine needles and branches by that one guy with telekinesis till he fucking explodes in just pieces all over the place. Yeah, there's some gnarly fucking kills in this movie, and it's very appropriate. It's not too over the top, but it's visceral and violent enough to have the R rating really pack a punch, and it's very appropriate. But this will lead me into my next pro number 10. This might be a weird pro, but this movie has really good fucked up scenes. And so I was going back to the R rating. This is
that poor family.
Huh?
That poor family that just showed kindness, compassion.
Yeah, I'll get to that. So, had this movie not been R-rated, these fucked up moments would not have had the impact that they have here if they were neutered. When Laura walks out carrying that dude's head after she cut it off, you're just like, oh, damn. Seeing this 4 foot tall, 11-year-old little girl just come out casually holding some dude's severed head, you're just like, damn. And the opening scene when Logan slaughters all those pendejos, it's violent and visceral and fucked up in kind of a shocking and surprising way. The scene in Gabriella's video that she shot on her phone, when you see Laura being experimented on, having the adamantium bonded to her, it's quite shocking to see, again, this tiny 11-year-old little girl have such a horrific experiment done on her. It's shocking and surprising. And you even see one kid in that same video just jump off a building to his death because he doesn't want to kill people. This movie has balls, and it's not afraid to use them whatsoever. And I really got to respect and admire that. But probably the most fucked up scene in the entire film, and one of the most fucked up scenes in any superhero film of all time, possibly the most fucked up, is when X-24 comes in and kills Professor X and the Munson family. In his commentary, James described it as becoming very close to like a horror film. And honestly, yeah, like you replace X-24 with Michael Myers, it is quite horrific. And the music really helps to accentuate that scene. It's dark, it's gritty, it's kind of creepy, and it's very doom and gloom and ominous, and it's very appropriate. And watching X-24 mindlessly slaughter all these people, especially when the farmers show up, it's quite shocking and visceral. And then Logan shows up and tries to fight him off, but X-24 is just kicking the living shit out of Logan this whole time. Stabs him in the neck, slashes up his back and his stomach, even stabs him in his fucking armpit. Like, ugh. I don't care who you are. That's got to hurt. And then the car comes out of nowhere, slams into X-24 and impales him on some farm equipment. He shoots him 3 times with a shotgun. And then right as he's about, like, he tries to shoot Logan, but he's out of ammo. And then Will Munson falls dead. That close up on Wolverine's face and that music that plays just hits home. Like beforehand, the film wasn't really dark per se. It was, gritty and kind of bleak, but it was not this. That music that plays is when it really hits you like, wow, this is fucked up.
But in a good way.
In a good way. Yeah, it's very appropriate and very fitting. And again, had this movie been PG-13, this entire scene would not be nearly as impactful, especially coming off the death of Professor X, one of the most beloved characters in superhero films before that time. Yeah, messed up as fuck. And Logan's death is also pretty fucked up, but in a different way that I'll talk about later. So yeah, this movie has balls. It earns its R rating. It embraces its R rating, and it's not afraid to show you some really messed up and visceral stuff to get a proper reaction out of the audience. And as James said in his commentary, with that piece of music that plays after X-24 is shot and Will Munson dies, the audience is kind of in shock at this point because of how fucked up this whole scene is. And the music was really used to enunciate that feeling of, damn, that was messed up. And I love it.
Sometimes movies just got to go that way. I mean, we think back to one of the movies we discussed before, The Mist with its ending, or Seven with its ending.
Oh, damn, Seven. What's in the box?
Her pretty head. And ironically, played by a real life villain.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah. And it's funny, too, because the X-Men series was directed by another real life villain, Bryan Singer, a lot of them.
What's wrong with Bryan Singer?
After the stream. Oh, boy. When
Okay,
Bryan Singer, Bryan Singer pretty much blacklisted from everything because he, well, I guess I'll just say it. He allegedly, well, I think maybe he got convicted. I don't know, because he may or may not have done some very foul things with underage adolescents.
Okay, this is news to me.
Oh yeah, I mean you can read. There's a lot of messed up stuff on Bryan Singer. That's why you don't see him in really anything anymore. Um, but yeah.
Pro number 11 is this movie, despite it being bleak and fucked up and dark, it does have a sense of humor. There
When
are
Wolverine smashing the car, fuck.
I don't really find that funny. I just find that kind of sad.
It is sad, but like sometimes when I kind of chuckle sometimes when you see people like really pissed off and like nothing's working, but just the letting out the rage like from a distance, you're just like fuck you, stupid car, fuck you. I gotta laugh out of that.
Some of the lines that Professor X says when he's having his dementia meltdowns are kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Lupa from Taco Bell. Fuck off, Logan. She's 11 and I'm fucking 90. I want to see it. Yeah, this. Oh, and so Laura coming out with that severed head, it is horrific, but at the same time, it is kind of funny. Like this big, giant Dave Bautista looking motherfucker comes in thinking that he's gonna wrangle up Laura. Then she comes out with just his disembodied head in her hands. She's like, okay.
I feel like this is something else.
Yeah, no kidding. And James did state that, yeah, this movie is dark and bleak, but he wanted to add just enough levity to not make this be misery porn, which is appreciated. And the humor doesn't overpower the rest of the film, and it doesn't taint the film's tone, thankfully, which is appreciated. There's just enough to not make you want to blow your brains out. Pro number 12 is the fantastic action scenes. There's not a whole bunch of action. Like the action scenes are kind of not really short but sweet, but they are a little bit on the shorter side, but they are very vicious and visceral, but they are also very entertaining. The editing is tight and crisp, just the way it needs to be. The chase scenes, what kind of few of them there are, mainly the smelting plant chase scene, and I guess like the final, like Logan's run, kind of is a chase scene too.
Mm-hmm.
The Logan,
You ever see that behind the scenes like ADR of Hugh Jackman do the like it's like him recording the ADR for like when he's doing those chase scenes. It's pretty cool.
yeah, I've seen that. It's kind of funny. His face turns fucking bright red. Um, so anyway, yeah, the action scenes are pretty entertaining in my opinion. It's the best action scene in the whole film is, of course, when Logan goes on his berserker rage when he's high on that green juice.
Mm-hmm.
He's slicing people up left and right, slashing throats, taking off arms and heads, impaling people with his claws, screaming, grunting, tearing people apart left and right. It's entertaining as fuck. And watching Laura tear people apart too is also entertaining. There's a nice contrast between Wolverine and Laura. Wolverine obviously is the big heavy bruiser, whereas Laura, she's smaller, but she's a lot faster and she's a lot more agile. She has shorter claws, but she can do a lot more. What the hell are you doing?
That's just the water if someone uses the toilet.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
runs down a pipe.
She can do a lot of damage at close range really quickly. She just, and when she's trying to take out X-24, she's just stabbing him and slashing at him left and right as quick as she can. And it's vicious, visceral, gnarly, and entertaining as fuck. But yeah, the action scenes overall are awesome, fantastically done. And the last pro that I have, kind of brief and minor, is the special effects. There's surprisingly not a lot of special effects in this movie. There is some like
VFX when they're having the two Logans on screen.
Yeah, there's that, but that's done mostly practically. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's one shot where it's Hugh, then there's a double, then there's another one where it's Hugh, and then a double, so on and so forth. But there's not really any like green screen or CG two characters at once, like the Flash type thing going on here. Mostly it's just kind of some digital enhancements. Like all the horses, when they escape in the street, they had riders, but they were all wearing blue suit leotards and they were just digitally removed in post. All those auto trucks were also digitally enhanced. They had actual cab drivers, but they just changed them around in post to make them just look like drone trucks. And obviously a lot of the slash marks and blood are CG, but it looks fine. It looks appropriate. All the slash wounds still look really gnarly and visceral and nasty. You know, the explosions look good. What kind of few of them there are. That's really about it. The claws obviously are for the most part digital. Like the foot claws on Laura when she first unsheaths them, that was a real foot claw. But that for the most part the claws are digital. But again, that's fine. They look just fine. Yeah, the effects are kind of used at a bare minimum. Honestly, I think the biggest effect is Logan himself. What with all the makeup, his face being red, all the scars, and his fucked up face and his fucked up beard and hair. That's about it. But still, the effects are solid, all very believable. This movie had I wouldn't say a small budget, but it did have a low-ish budget compared to other superhero films coming out.
Okay, $90+ million. We can't call that low budget. That's
No, but it wasn't a gargantuan like Avengers Infinity War level budget.
Okay, budgets have gotten so far out of hand that $100 million is considered small by big budget movie standards.
Sadly, yeah.
That's a scary thing to think about. When it's just like, wait, what? Because you look at like how other things used to be budgeted, like $100 million is apparently like, oh my gosh, that's so low budget. No wonder it looks like this. I'm like, that's a lot of fucking money. Like,
yeah, that's what Robert Downey Jr. is getting paid to play Dr. Doom. God, that must be nice.
Right. I mean, like the Russos are getting $80 million for their 2 movies. So that's $180 million.
160. I see what you mean. Yeah.
No,
but still,
no, because like Downey Jr. is getting $100 million at least, and the Russos are getting $80 million combined, so it's $180 million.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Oh, okay. Because like some people are saying it was like 90. No, he's getting $100 million at least, and plus back end deals and all that. So that's $180 million of the budget just going for those 3 for 2 movies, though. So
you can make 8 movies with $180 million.
As somebody said, you can make like a dozen Godzilla -1s with that money. It's just ridiculous how much we're spending on just actors. I'm like, I don't think it's going to really make that much of a difference. But hey, you know what? Go for it. Waste your money. Throw it down the drain.
Anyway, so again, 97 to 127 million. That is a fair chunk of change. So not saying that this movie had a low budget, but it is in a good way a very economical film. Like there's no flashy special effects. There's no beam wars or people blasting energy beams all over the place. Not really any big explosions. It's a very small scale film, but it works. But with the money that they had, they spent it well, and the movie does look really good as a result. Minus 1 or 2 fairly obvious green screen shots. But still, how could I not? It's in motherfucking Bob way.
Why does he fart so much after the bath? Jesus.
I don't know. He's weird. He's his mother's son.
Why are you farting so much?
He's got to get the farting and burping from you, Nick. I mean, like every video, you're always like, you know what? You didn't have there was no word from your sponsor today. I'm kind of surprised.
Roman took care of that.
Alrighty. So I have, after 13 fucking pros, I have 2 nitpicks, although one of them's kind of layered, and I have 2 cons.
I kind of have like, these are kind of molded together. I'm just going to get through them quickly because we've been chatting for like over 2 hours at this point. Sean is tired. Oh, there you go, you disgusting piece of shit. Right back at you. You know what? I'm gonna do the X sign.
Fuck, I used to have the X-Men Origins Wolverine claws where you could retract the claws. I would
Oh,
totally do
and
that.
they look more real than the ones in the movie. Because they're
Yeah, it's
actually
never.
there. I
I
guess
mean,
I'll say
I'd
with one of my
say,
first.
read between the lines. You still got plausible deniability.
Mm. But anyways, I'll say like kind of my first con here. I will say the pacing, like upon rewatching it, a lot of the movie does kind of drag at certain points in the film, and I don't find the whole entire movie 100% interesting. Because there's times where we're spent with I already forgot the guy's name, not Boyd Holbrook's character, but the doctor guy. Like he leaves like no impact on this movie whatsoever, really to me. He's just
Xander.
like, yeah, whatever his name is. So like there are some forgettable elements to this film. It's not like one of the things where like everything is 100% firing on all cylinders. And speaking of antagonists, I feel like this movie lacks a great antagonist. Boyd Holbrook gives a fine performance, but nothing really amazing or anything like
Oh,
that. Like that just kind of just it just I want a great antagonist in this type of movie, and it just like I mean, yeah, this is Logan's story, but like I mean, the villains just they just feel kind of forgettable to me. Like by the time the movie's done, and that's kind of an issue with the X-Men films. Outside of really Magneto, none of the villains have like stood out to me all that much. Like I'm not thinking like, wow, what a great villain performance that I'm going to remember years from now. I forgot they were in the movie. I forgot the one doctor was even in the movie.
I will say too, I like the idea of X-24. I'm a big fan of evil doppelganger
Mm-hmm.
characters, and that essentially is what X-24
Oh
is.
yeah, I mean X-24 I guess kind of counts, but it's just kind of like a
Thing
mindless
is, though,
drone.
X-24 is just a mindless killing machine. There's
Right.
nothing to him other than that.
And it's not like a Michael Myers where they have their own agency. Well, unless you count like the producer's cut of Halloween 6, but I mean that's another example. It's not like they're actually on their own will for us. They're just mind controlled like a drone. It's like me using a weapon. I mean
Pawns.
pawns, yeah. And like, pawn villains can work if they have more of their own agency, whereas X-20
X-24 does not. He's just a
right.
big gun.
Exactly. And it's like, yeah, like it doesn't leave much of an impact. It's not like he was kind of like a clone that was really kind of like an evil one that had his own like thinking and whatnot. He just fights and kills things.
Not like
So
Strife, the clone of Cable, who is his own character and has his own agency.
right. And like clones can
Um,
work as villains too. I mean, look at the comics of like DC where Damian Wayne had a clone like the Heretic who was a villain, had his own agency and all that. So but like that can work in that regards. But this one was just like it was fine. And like those are really kind of like from a story standpoint, I don't really have any two like major issues with this film that I think
no, me neither.
there's nothing I think is downright bad in the movie that I just despise or anything like that. Nothing all that noticeable. But like upon rewatching it, like I still think the movie is pretty good. But there's something I don't know, like it feels like it's missing something for me to be like, wow, my God, that's like the greatest thing I've ever seen. Like, do you ever have that where movies you think are, perfectly fine or good, and you just don't get why everyone loves them to the absolute extreme? Like, I understand why people like this movie, but like, I just can't love it the same levels. It's like something is disconnecting for me upon like rewatching it. Like if I really love this movie, like to like 10 out of 10 levels, I feel like I would be watching it more regularly than every couple of years. But maybe it's just I am so burnt out on the X-Men movies as a whole, and I just kind of like I just don't really have much interest anymore at this point. But like this one actually like is still really good, and it stands up above basically all the other ones for what it tried, for what it did, and like how it acted as a really good swan song for this character at the time. Like it's a solid movie for sure.
To answer your question, Godzilla -1. Moving on. Um, James actually did toy around with the idea of having Sabretooth return for this film.
Was
And
he in a deleted scene?
there was a deleted scene, but I think that was like a dream scene or something,
Mm-hmm.
but I never watched it. But that's neither here nor there.
They should have
I
had both Sabretooths like back and forth. Like Logan's so out of it, he's seeing both of them.
I do think that was a little bit of a missed opportunity because this is Logan's movie.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the most iconic Wolverine villain? Sabretooth.
Well, I mean, Magneto.
He's an X-Men villain, not a
But
Wolverine.
Wolverine is the X-Men basically with these movies.
Sure, but point being, the most iconic rival that Wolverine has
Sabretooth.
faced is Sabretooth. So I think it was. This isn't a con or a bad thing or anything, but I do think it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. Like James said, like, why would Sabretooth be here? Why is he working for Transigen? Like, who the fuck cares? Why does Sabretooth do half the shit that he does? I don't really think that's something that you really need to explain. I mean, like one line of dialogue saying, oh, well, he's just a piece of shit who likes to hunt. Why not have something that acts like what you're hunting help you hunt what you're hunting? Like, fuck it, use Sabretooth. Why not? There you go. There's your explanation right there. You could have had Sabretooth as the villain. Finally, we could have seen Wolverine finally defeat Sabretooth. I'm sure people all over the world have been wanting to see that. But anyway, so I have two nitpicks. Number one is that near the beginning, Logan is a bit too bitter and angry and stubborn for my tastes.
Yeah, I mean that can get a little bit, especially when you've seen like maybe I am too a little bit tired of that trend. I mean, it works more for this movie because that's just Wolverine. He's always been a bit of an outcast, but I'm kind of so tired of the trope of the heroic figures now jaded, cynical, bitter, angry, old, can't do anything. Like it's gotten so like I mean this came out a little bit before like the trend was there, so I got to kind of look at it in that context. But maybe
and
because
it works for Wolverine.
It works for Wolverine, but maybe because I've seen it with so many characters nowadays, I'm so like
it is a bit tired.
It's so tired. Actually, another movie that did that the same year, your favorite, or was it 2018? Or no, it was 2017. Your favorite Star Wars movie came out where they did the same.
Oh, fuck you. But yeah, I get why Logan is so angry and just bitter throughout this film. Like,
right,
so much shit. It makes sense. But for him to just constantly be in denial, just like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be near it. I don't want to do 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 it. Like, dude, you got so much shit blasting you in the face and you're intentionally keeping your head buried in the sand? What the fuck, dude?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't last very long, thankfully. It's mostly in the first third of the film when it's just a little frustrating. But I can just kind of power through it and deal with it. And because this movie, that's a big aspect of this film, that does make sense. I can accept it. That doesn't mean I have to like it. But my other nitpick, this one's kind of layered. There are details about this film that are kind of left frustratingly vague.
Mm-hmm.
The movie never explains what happened to the X-Men.
Wasn't it a psychic attack or something that killed him?
And specifically for me, well, hang on. Yeah, what's wrong with Charles? What happened to the rest of the X-Men? And what's wrong with Logan? Now, the first two, you can, like, the film kind of drip feeds you a little bit of information that you can infer from context. And you can infer from, like, seeing what's going on with Charles. Like, it's some kind of degenerative brain disease, probably either Alzheimer's or dementia, one or the other. And that's not a big deal, but it'd be nice if there was some kind of confirmation. Mm-hmm. And what happened to the X-Men also can be inferred. It's highly implied that something happened with Charles and he ended up accidentally killing a whole bunch of them, which again can be inferred, but it would be nice if that was like confirmed. And like somebody like finally reveals, yeah, like Cyclops and Jean Grey and Beast all had brain aneurysms from Charles's uncontrollable power. It would be nice if something like that could have been confirmed. But the main thing that drives me nuts about this movie, what the fuck is wrong with Wolverine?
It's the poisoning from the adamantium.
Yeah, I get it, but why is it happening? Like one theory that I heard when this movie was coming out, I think Wolverine does lose his healing ability in The Wolverine for a good chunk of that film. I hate that trope. So I heard that one theory is like this movie was because he had never fully recovered and he had never fully gained his powers back after the events of the Wolverine, and now his adamantium skeleton is slowly poisoning him to death. And another theory, I think this is what the movie leans more towards, is that finally, because Wolverine is over 300 years old, his body has gotten to the point where it's so worn out and it's so taxed and fucked up that his healing factor is not working as well, and the metal poisoning from his adamantium skeleton is starting to catch up with him, and it's slowly killing him. I think this is what the film is more leaning towards, but again, the movie never confirms it. And during the commentary with James, he never reveals any details about the three things I asked. What's wrong with Charles? What happened to the X-Men? And what's wrong with Logan? He never reveals anything. And I don't think he ever has revealed anything since this film's come out. So I don't know if he is intentionally leaving it vague, just leaving it up to the viewer's interpretation, or if he's just choosing to not divulge those details. But either way, it is a little frustrating how intentionally vague, seemingly to me, this film feels. And I have two cons. Both are fairly minor, although I do have one that is also a little bit more involved. Con number one, the final Wolverine Berserker Rage, as awesome as it is, it's too short.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted at least like a 5-minute extended sequence where Wolverine is just going left and right, fucking people up, slicing throats, gutting people, tearing out their intestines. You know, we do see some of that, but it's so brief and so fleeting. And the scene when Laura and Wolverine fight together, both in their prime, is way too short. There's not really a good scene where they play off of each other's strengths. Again, Wolverine's the big badass bruiser. Laura is the swift and agile speedster. There's maybe one brief second where that's played up, but then it passes. I want to see more of that where those two back each other up, going back to the two iconic characters, evening each other out and balancing their strengths and weaknesses. I wanted to see more of that. But yeah, as awesome as it is, Wolverine tearing people apart with a supercharged healing factor, it's really cool, but it's over and done with almost in the snap of a finger. And then it goes right back to him being weak and not being able to heal and fucked off for the rest of the movie. And this leads me into my big problem with this movie. Logan versus X-24 is woefully one-sided. The fight at the Munson farm makes sense because Wolverine doesn't know what he's getting into, so he gets his ass kicked. That makes sense, and that's fine. But the second fight, the medicine's already worn off, and Wolverine barely is able to get a couple hits in on X-24.
I mean, to be fair, the man has been stabbed like 80 million times at this point. His body just can't keep up anymore, but he's still fighting.
I get it. Doesn't mean I have to like it. I would have preferred if it was done differently. And all what Logan gets on X-24, he takes that car door, whacks him aside the face one time, and then he tries strangling him with the door. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all that Logan manages to get on X-24.
Laura does shoot him, though, so.
Laura does shoot him, which is cool. And this leads me to what I wish we could have seen. I wish that the medicine lasted a lot longer. He's tearing people apart left and right. And then as their big trump card, X-24 is unleashed. And because Logan is still high on the green juice, his healing factor works just fine. So power level wise, Logan and X-24 are equal. So they're slicing each other up left and right. But Logan has the upper edge because he's not mindless. He has his own, he's sentient. He has his mind intact. And he's also much older and he's much more experienced at combat.
So
So
you're
while
thinking Dark Knight Returns when Batman fights the mutant guy the first time versus the second time, where you can't fully brute force him the way he did, but he has to kind of think smarter in the fight.
Sure, yeah, he has to use his literal centuries of fighting experience in order to match X-24's savagery. And for the most part, Logan is kicking the crap out of X-24. But then towards the end of it, that's when the green juice starts to wear off. But then I would have preferred, like, he starts getting sliced up a little too much. But then Laura and Wolverine team up against X-24 and they both just slice him apart and they finish him off with that adamantium bullet to the head.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would have preferred they ended this movie on. And then they still could have had that sad death scene because the green juice wears off and Logan's just been sliced the fuck up all over his body. That's what causes him to die.
Mm-hmm.
Or it also could have been like Pierce could have pulled out a gun and started shooting at Logan, but then to save the kids, because Logan had saved them from X-24, the kids kill Pierce, but because he's finally just had too much, sliced up a whole bunch of times, then shot a whole bunch of times, that's when Logan dies. And believe it or not, Logan dying is not a con for me. I don't like it. I don't like watching it particularly, but it's not a con.
Right. Sometimes, characters end up dying in media, but like if it's handled respectfully like this one is, it's
Like
fine.
this one, absolutely. It's very rare when a character's death is done well. Honestly, off the top of my head, Alien 3 does work as well. So Alien 3,
And then she comes back sort of Alien Risk. Caesar works in War for the Planet of the Apes because
Caesar
because he was
doesn't work as well for me.
I think it works because he gets stabbed, but like he basically like brings his people to the peaceful land, and he kind of dies like Maurice has that moment with him. He's just like he takes a deep breath. He's smiling because the apes are finally free, and then he slowly kind of drifts to the side. And like it's a nice, really kind of quiet scene. It just like he kind of goes almost peacefully, like his blood loss is there, and also 2017. Boy, we lost Logan and Caesar the same year. I think my friend and I remember a conversation. My friend and I were talking about that. We're like, damn, we lost both of them. So
yeah, Logan dying is not a con for me, surprisingly. I knew that going in. Like I just knew, oh yeah, he's gonna die. He's gonna die.
You just
They're
know.
doing old man Logan, he's gonna die. I just know it.
Because like sometimes some deaths can ruin a movie. Like a character dies too soon. Scream 5.
Yes, yeah.
I still hate that to this. Like that is the last time a movie character death really like pissed me off, and something where it's like it was my favorite character in the Scream franchise. To be fair, I'm a little biased there, but because they died so like kind of like midway through the film, and he was the one actor who really wanted to stick around more, and the other like two leads were just like, why are you doing this? Like Wes would have shot it the other way, but nah, we got the core 4 who like just not that great, to be honest, in that series. But just like it, like that was the one bit where I'm just like, that's the one death like in recent memory where I just got so like the moment that happens, the movie loses any momentum it had, like everything it had going for it, it's just gone. So, but not Logan.
So, with all that being said, I think you just gave your final thoughts. So I'll give my final thoughts on Logan, unless you have anything else to say.
No, I feel like we've talked longer than the entire movie's runtime at this point.
Only by 10 minutes.
Only by 10 minutes, but still, we talked.
Logan is a fucking masterpiece. Again, this is the greatest X-Men film ever made. It's the best of all the Fox X-Men films. It's one of my favorite superhero films of all time, without a doubt. It's one of my favorite films of 2017. It's actually, yeah, it's my number one favorite. No, my number two
What was
favorite
number
film,
one?
Kong Skull Island.
Oh, Kong Skull Island.
Yeah, it's my second favorite film of 2017. And is in general just one of my favorite movies of all time. I can sit down and watch this movie and just never be bored. Obviously, I've watched it 7 or 8 times in the last week and a half. I love this movie. It's just it's a very special and a very unique film. It's the one time in the Fox X-Men series that we got R-rated Wolverine, and it was a good one to end on. As far as I'm concerned, this is when the X-Men series ended.
Yeah, it you know, I mean, because he still had Deadpool 2 coming out, but like after that, like Logan would have been like technically it's in the future. So you could just say this is where it ends.
Yeah, absolutely. So, despite my nitpicks and despite my couple of cons, I'm going to give this movie a solid gold 10 out of 10. I love this movie, unabashedly. James Mangold made a fantastic Wolverine movie.
As for me, I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. So
I kind of figured. That's okay.
yeah, I think, like I said, I totally understand why people like go masterpiece and all that. All the moving pieces are there, and like I said, it's a very different approach. And I anyone who says this is their favorite X-Men movie, totally 100% agree. As for me, like I said, there's a lot of things that I really like about it as well, but like there's some other things that I'm just like it doesn't quite like. It could have been stronger in a lot of ways. And I think some of the suggestions you made actually would have helped improve it about like the final fight scene and all that too. Like I said, I really like the quieter emotional moments in the film, but like I said, there's a lot of bits that do drag in, you know, outside of the big three, like actors, some of the other characters don't stand out quite as much to me. Like you have all the other kids who I forget they're there. Boyd Holbrook's fine, but like not an amazing antagonist. Like I feel like this needed like an all-time like villain. Like maybe you could have found a way to bring Sabretooth in as like Boyd Holbrook's type character. It would have that personal connection to Wolverine and or something kind of like that. And like you said, X-24 is just kind of a mindless like monster. But like I said, there's some really good emotional beats to it with the stuff with him and the family. Like there's some kind of sweet tender parts in there as well that really kind of help elevate this over a lot of other films in the genre. And if people consider this like 10 out of 10 masterpiece, totally get it.
Or here's another idea. Instead of having Laura and Wolverine team up to take on X-24, instead of Donald Pierce's character, why not just have Sabretooth in Pierce's place with X-24 as like his sidekick Big Gun? Laura takes on X-24, and then the final climactic fight to end Wolverine's tenure would be Wolverine high on that green juice, kicking the shit out of Sabretooth and finally killing him.
But which Sabretooth? Tyler Mane or Liev Schreiber?
Tyler Mane, come on now.
Okay. Just saying, because it's weird. Because like Sabretooth's so different between X-Men Origins Wolverine and like the 2000 like first X-Men movie. Because like, I mean, Sabretooth is kind of worse.
Sabretooth.
Yeah, the other one's just like
Liev Schreiber's a joke.
Yeah.
Good actor.
Good actor who was also in Scream, which it ties. Everything is connected somehow.
Oh yeah, that's right. He is in Scream. All right, so that's beside the point. Thank you very much to all those who watched this, and thank you very much for being patient with me and my very inconsistent uploading schedule. I would like to dedicate this review to Hugh Jackman and Sir Patrick Stewart for giving us a good swan song for the X-Men series. I'd like to dedicate this to Channel Nerdgasm for, again, inspiring me to take on a superhero project. Hey, you might want to review Old Man Logan. Just a little hint. And thank you to Seanie Boy for joining me for this, even though he's been up for almost 30 hours. You got anything to plug?
Posted some videos. Like I actually I'll record this one tomorrow. I got to talk the DC solicitations. The G-Fest video was a fun one. That was not too long ago. I got to get back to some more kind of written stuff, but I started working a new gig like last week, which, you know, that's going pretty well, but my hours are much longer than I was before at the moment until I finally get things kind of caught up and situated there. So I've just been kind of tired today. That's why I've been up so early. Like I couldn't really sleep much because I had so much stuff I had to do, and I'm just like a machine nonstop. So the days are going by faster, but I'm feeling pretty good. We got to talk Logan. I haven't seen this one in a few years, and it's a very solid movie. It's like I said, if I would have given it, the only way it would give me like higher is I would have kept like, because I spent so many years like not really watching it and like not revisiting so much. It's kind of like I have to kind of revisit a movie more often for me to really kind of give it a higher rating if I'm watching it more frequently. So I mean, like I said, this is a very solid film, and it definitely works. Like arguably like the best of the X-Men films. And like if anyone says like another film is, I'd like to hear their take on why they say it's a little better or why not. But it's pretty good. So, but more stuff coming on the channel and all that too. So, I'm gonna try and see Alien Romulus soon.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I talked to somebody. They said it's their third favorite after the first two, but like it's actually like good. And I'm like, oh my god, a good Alien movie. We haven't had one since the first two, like pure Alien movies.
I plead the fifth. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Share this video with your friends. Look forward to my next video. I have no clue what it's going to be, but still look forward to it. And remember, I'm the best there is at what I do. But what I do is not very nice. And I will see you guys in the next video.
Peace out, bitches.